Chapter 3864. Arriving in front of the Hundred Birds Palace, Bien Xiaoya was led into the hall, while Zihan was led to the side by the disciples of the martial sect. Zihan wasn't qualified to meet Qin Jun. Bien Xiaoya entered the palace and saw a figure sitting on a cloud bed. It was Qin Jun. Bien Xiaoya respectfully kowtowed to him. He was someone from the same generation as her master. Just his ruler status alone was enough for her to kowtow. "Greetings, Lord Qin Jun," Bien Xiaoya loudly greeted. "Rise," Qin Jun said slowly. "Your master and I are fellow Taoists, friends of life and death. You don't need to be so polite. The last time I saw you was tens of thousands of years ago. I didn't expect you to become a pillar of the divine court in the blink of an eye. Thanks to Master, I've gained something," Bien Xiaoya respectfully said. "Your master is a person of great wisdom and perseverance. There's no harm in learning from him," Qin Jun said. "Yes," Bien Xiaoya said. "All right, you should go and attend the banquet. After that, you have to prepare for war," Qin Jun said. "War?" Bien Xiaoya was a little surprised. "Why? Your master hasn't told you yet." Qin Jun glanced at Bien Xiaoya and said, "Not yet. Please advise me, Lord Qin Jun." Bien Xiaoya bowed and said. Qin Jun paused for a moment and then said, "This time, the four rulers ganged up on your master. It's a provocation to our martial epic, so we can't just let it go like this. Aside from the insect epic that your master destroyed, there are still 3 epics remaining. When the time comes, we will definitely launch an expedition to wipe out the fire epic, the blood epic, and the puppet epic in one fell swoop. At that time, you will definitely lead the team." Bien Xiaoya nodded. If that was the case, she would definitely lead the team to seek justice for her master. "But with my strength, I can only deal with heavenly venerables. It's not enough to deal with half-step rulers," Bien Xiaoya said. "Don't worry, your master and I have already investigated. There are no longer any half-step rulers in these 3 epics. You can do whatever you want. As for the half-step rulers in the other ancient epics, you don't have to worry. They won't dare to attack unless they plan to destroy us all," Qin Jun said confidently. Unless the ancient era's half-step rulers were suicidal, they wouldn't dare to make a move. In the ancient epic, half-step sovereigns were extremely rare. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Although their rarity couldn't be compared to sovereigns, it was normal for several epochs to have no half-step sovereigns. "Understood. Thank you, Lord Qin Jun, for your guidance." With a heavy heart, Bien Xiaoya went down to attend the banquet. At this banquet, heroes from all over the world gathered together to congratulate King Qin. Although this banquet lasted for 99 whole days, it finally came to an end. Everyone was still immersed in the joy and excitement of Qin Jun becoming a hegemon. The 3 holy lands worked together to issue an order, mobilizing their armies to conquer the primal chaos. Their targets were the fire epic, the puppet epic, and the blood epic. Immediately, the entire martial epic was filled with the atmosphere of a powerful army. Many of the experts from the ancient epics felt startled. The martial epic was truly unimaginably tyrannical. Not only did the martial epic possess the horrifying strength of 2 sovereigns, but more importantly, the martial epic destroyed all epics that dared to challenge it. If a half-step ruler's epic challenged it, it would destroy the half-step ruler's epic along with his epic. If a ruler's epic attacked, it would destroy the ruler's epic along with his epic. Such tyrannical strength, not caring who the enemy was, only asking where the enemy was. This was something that terrified many people. This was especially so for the fire epic, the puppet epic, and the blood epic. Because they had hegemon-level experts before, when the epic changed, they preserved more of their strength. Under such circumstances, they could be said to be among the top of the many ancient epics. However, such a strong epic could not withstand a single blow without the protection of a heavenly monarch. Dealing with the other ancient epics might not be a problem. However, it would not be that easy to deal with the martial epic at its peak. Many of the ancient epics trembled in fear as they tried to figure out the meaning of the martial epic. The meaning of the martial epic was very clear. No matter who it was, Anyone who dared to provoke the martial epic and target the martial epic would be killed no matter how far away they were. In the past, when the martial epic was not this strong and prosperous, they might not have been able to do anything to the martial epic. However, now, with the emergence of the martial monarch and the Qin monarch, two peak experts, the martial epic gained the ability to take revenge. This made the might of the martial epic exceptionally horrifying. However, although many of the ancient epics feared the might of the martial epic and did not dare to make a move, if a good opportunity appeared, would they turn a blind eye to it? He was afraid that there would still be many ambitious people who would become restless. No one would let go of such a good opportunity. Previously, be it the half-moon immortal lord's plan of a pack of wolves biting a tiger to death, or the four sovereigns attacking the martial epic, those could be said to be perilous situations. Ordinary people, even one of them, could not make it through. It could only be said that Yi Shiwen was too good at creating miracles, creating legends. Under those circumstances, Yi Shiwen actually managed to turn the situation around. On the contrary, the armies of the ancient epics collapsed. Many monsters that had lived for several epochs sighed in grief. They had never seen such a troublesome epic, or rather, they had never seen such a troublesome person. And this person was Yi Shiwen. There had never been anyone who could pose such a great threat to the ancient epic. How many half-step sovereigns and sovereigns had fallen at his hands? Even if one added them up, one could not count them with two hands. Even when the fortune creation heavenly monarch was in power, he did not have such a glorious and horrifying battle record. In the hearts of many experts of the ancient epics, Yi Shiwen was without a doubt the greatest enemy of the entire ancient epic. The armies of the martial epic quickly organized themselves. With the armies of the three holy lands as the main force and the elite armies of the various sects and races, they formed a vast army and killed their way into the primal chaos. Amidst the primal chaos, countless experts from the ancient epics stood on the mottled city walls filled with traces of time, watching the martial epic's army march out once again. The reason why it was said to be set off again was that the martial epic had set off too many times during this period. Even the experts themselves could not remember how many times the martial epic had set off. The ancient epics in the entire primal chaos could not remember when the martial epic had become so active. They only remembered that the martial epic would set off once in a while. Furthermore, the martial epic's expeditions started with Yi Shiwen, the Middle Heavenly Venerates, and even Qin Zun organizing expeditions. Later on, the Heavenly Venerates spontaneously led expeditions to exterminate the armies of the ancient epics, slowly uprooting the ancient epics that were hostile to the martial epic. This time, the martial epic set off again. Many people of the ancient epics lamented. Could it be that even the ancient epics with sovereigns could not protect themselves? In the past, in their opinion, the ancient epics with sovereigns were as stable as Mount Tai. Even after many epics changed, they would not fall. Now, Yi Shiwen had exterminated many of them. Now, the army of the martial epic was going to exterminate 3 of them. No one knew when it started. It was probably since Yi Shiwen's rise. The epics with the birth of sovereigns were no different from ordinary ancient epics. Hence, they were exterminated just like that. The martial epic's army took the lead to charge at the puppet epic. The puppet epic lived up to its name as the epic with the birth of a sovereign. It was clearly much stronger than the other epics. The martial epic's army surrounded the puppet epic's army. However, they cannot break through immediately. The boundless puppets blocked even the martial epic's army. The martial epic's army did not have an absolute advantage like Yi Shiwen. Even if the martial epic's army encountered an endless number of puppets, they would not be able to stop him. The martial epic's army ran into trouble. This was especially so after the puppet epic's puppet experts woke up. The situation became even more perilous. Many experts of the ancient epics, watching from afar, cheered to themselves. They all hoped that the martial epic's army would suffer a great loss here. However, their hopes were destined to fail. After Bian Xiaoya made her move, everything turned around. With the martial saint's seal in hand, Bien Xiaoye could practically kill anything in her way. A boundless puppet army? When the martial saint's seal landed, the puppet army turned to dust. There was not even a ripple before it vanished. When a heavenly venerate expert smashed the puppet army with the martial saint's seal, his physical body immediately shattered. His bones flew everywhere. There was no way to stop it. If the martial saint's seal landed, even a heavenly venerate would die without a grave. Bien Xiaoye was simply too ferocious. Even with the countless formations and barriers of the puppet epic, they could not stop him. Such rare combat prowess inspired fear. Without any half-step sovereigns, the puppet epic's heavenly Tao could not retaliate against Bien Xiaoye, who held the martial saint's seal. When one appeared, one would die. When a group appeared, many would die. In the end, the puppet epic's heavenly Tao even materialized a huge puppet that pressed down on Bien Xiaoye. Chapter 3865. Another horrifying battle ensued. Although the puppet epic's huge puppet had not reached the level of a ruler, it was at least a half-step ruler, which was more than enough to deal with. Bien Xiaoye charged over with the martial saint seal when facing such a strong enemy. An unprecedented battle instantly erupted. Although Bien Xiaoye was still far from a half-step ruler, with the martial saint's seal in hand, she was able to hold her own against the huge puppet. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Although Bien Xiaoye was no match for the huge puppet, just delaying it was already a great help to the martial epic's army. The puppet epic's heavenly will had already condensed into that huge half-step ruler puppet and could not suppress the martial epic's army. Allowing the martial epic's army to bring out 100% of its power was already a great boost to the martial epic's army. On the other side, the peak experts of the martial great lineage and the fortune divine dynasty gathered. They circulated the heavenly sealing talisman and finally sealed the puppet epic's heavenly will. However, the puppet epic had produced a ruler before, after all. Its heavenly will was far stronger than the heavenly will of other epics that had only produced half-step rulers. Including Yimo, 10 peak heavenly venerates worked together to form a formation, but they could only barely suppress the puppet epic's heavenly will. This allowed Bien Xiaoye to release her bated breath. Although that huge puppet was as strong as a half-step ruler, it was not a true half-step ruler. After the heavenly sealing talisman suppressed the puppet epic's heavenly will, it automatically disappeared. But even so, it was still a huge test for her. She had also heard many rumors that Yi Shiwen intended to nurture her. Otherwise, it would be obvious that she would be the commander of the Allied Army's expedition against the primal chaos. She also knew how great the pressure of this heavy burden was, so she had to work even harder. Without the suppression of the epic's heavenly will, the martial epic's army quickly crushed the puppet epic's resistance. The battle lasted for a full 10 years. For the chaos, this period of time was merely the blink of an eye. After destroying the puppet epic's resistance, the martial epic started to plunder the puppet epic's wealth. After handing it over to the 3 holy lands, everyone who went out to fight received bountiful returns. The destruction of the ancient era. Every operation was an operation with great returns. After destroying the puppet epic, the armies of the martial epic entered the leaf fire epic without stopping. The leaf fire epic was filled with boundless flames spewing out at the same time. Many of these flames were famous in the many epics, extremely unimaginable divine flames. From the very start, it posed a great threat to the martial epic. Be it the environment or the various life forms born in it, they were all flames, all sorts of flames. The stronger the life form, the more expert it was at controlling flames. This was much more dangerous than the previous puppet era. Fortunately, the martial epic's army was basically made up of the elites of the epics, the experts among experts. All of them had boundless magic energy and vast magic skills. They had no problem moving about in water or in fire. This was especially so after Bien Xiaoye used the martial saint's seal and the heaven sealing talisman to suppress the leaf fire epic's heavenly Tao. The boundless divine flames were no longer as mighty. However, as an epic that had a ruler, The Leaf Fire epic resisted intensely, causing significant problems for the martial epic's army. However, in the end, that clump of flame-like Leaf Fire epic was still extinguished. The martial epic swallowed up the entire epic's heavenly Tao, snatching away the various divine flames it contained. At the same time, the martial epic's various fire-attributed magic skills and cultivation techniques erupted like a volcano. The cultivators of fire-attributed magic skills and cultivation techniques advanced greatly. The martial epic even gave birth to a Leaf Fire realm, just like the Leaf Fire epic. It resonated with the nearby Heptagold realm. After destroying the Leaf Fire epic, Bian Xiaoya led the martial epic's army to the final Blood epic, the Leaf Fire epic. In the Blood epic, the various life forms seemed to have slaughtered their way out of the sea of blood and mountains of corpses. They were incredibly horrifying and unimaginably strong. However, the martial epic's army had the upper hand in both quantity and quality. They could not stop the martial epic's army. The more Bian Xiaoya fought, the stronger she became. Aside from suppressing the Blood epic with the martial saint's seal, she even personally fought and killed several Blood epics' heavenly venerates. Although those Blood epics' heavenly venerates were very strong, they were clearly not on the same level as Bian Xiaoya, so she easily killed them. After another 10 years, the Blood epic was completely destroyed. After several decades, the Blood epic finally fell. Like the Puppet epic and the Leaf Fire epic, it was completely destroyed. In less than 100 years, 3 great epics were destroyed at the same time. Including the Insect epic that Yi Shiwen destroyed earlier, it was as good as 4 great epics being destroyed. Furthermore, 4 epics had produced rulers. Such epics could not be destroyed normally. Each of them had more than 10 epics worth of history. Even after more than 10 epics changed, they still could not do anything to them. Now, they were destroyed at the hands of the martial epic. More accurately, they were destroyed at the hands of Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen had not killed the rulers of these 4 epics, these 4 epics would not have been destroyed. Many ancient epics trembled under the might of the martial epic. Even the ancient epics that formed an allied army could not feel safe under the might of the martial epic's 2 rulers. Even if they wanted to support the 4 epics, they did not dare to do so. There was an alliance, but this alliance did not dare to truly oppose the martial epic. This was because the stubborn people who dared to oppose the martial epic were basically finished. Most of them had been eliminated, and the remaining people didn't dare to throw their lives away without a sovereign to lead them. After the martial epic devoured the 4 epics, including the Insect epic, it actually regained its vitality. Although Yi Shiwen failed to extend the martial epic's life the first time, the martial epic returned to its peak by destroying the ancient epics. Everyone felt that cultivation became easier and more geniuses were born. The aura of destruction that originally lingered in the air finally vanished. The martial epic returned to its peak. Chapter 3866. The martial epic at its peak made countless cultivators rejoice. It also made the expressions of many ancient epics change. The martial epic was too strong. Originally, the martial epic was strong because it was the epic of the age, so it should be strong. However, after the martial epic was destroyed, it was no different from them. Once upon a time, the various ancient epics had been this strong. However, the strength of the current martial epic had already surpassed the strength of the current epic. Many people already exclaimed, the current martial epic was very strong. Since ancient times, it was recorded in the records as one of the strongest ancient epics. It was practically history. However, even though it was so strong, the martial epic was still unwilling to give up. There was even an ambitious martial lord, Yi Shiwen, who wanted to prolong the martial epic's life. What a frightening thing this was. An epic that wanted to stubbornly survive was not good news for them. After the destruction of a few epics, the martial epic's strength showed itself. A large number of experts appeared. The first to bear the brunt were the armies of the martial epic that were selected to go on expeditions to the 3 ancient epics. After returning to the martial epic, Nearly all of them received the baptism of the martial epic's heavenly Tao. Not everyone received merits, but they all clearly felt the opportunity to break through their bottlenecks. This was also the heavenly Tao's reward. Among the heavenly venerates who led the way, Bien Sia directly broke through to stage 8 heavenly venerate with the help of the golden light of merit. Furthermore, like Yi Shiwen, she cultivated the golden body of merit. It was just that she cultivated the great Azura body. So, she had directly cultivated the Azura golden body of virtue and opened up one of the strongest constitutions in the world. She could even contend with and even defeat ordinary 9th level heavenly venerables. Although she could not compare to Yi Shiwen's level, it was still extremely shocking in the current epic. Yi Mo, Young Kuan Peng, Yi Wudi, and the others also followed Bien Xiaoya to battle. Although they did not obtain as many benefits as Bien Xiaoya, they all obtained the golden body of merit. Coupled with their peak heavenly venerate cultivation bases, it could be said that they had already reached the peak of the heavenly venerate realm. They could even contend against the sovereign. However, to the life forms of the martial epic, the emergence of many experts was already a great age of geniuses. In such a flourishing age, the 3 holy lands produced the most experts. Although the god of good fortune didn't have a ruler in this world, there had once been a good fortune heavenly monarch, and his foundation was unimaginably deep. Many Empyreans had encountered such a great era, and all of them had broken through. Many people even more so had tears in their eyes, mourning their old friends. In the distant past, countless years of time, it was unknown just how many heavenly geniuses and heroes fell on the path of seeking the Tao. None of them were able to wait for the arrival of this golden era. If it were now, their old friends would definitely be able to go further. Not to mention them. Even Yishuan himself also sighed with emotion in his heart. If Man Yun had been in such a great world back then, he wouldn't have fallen so easily on the road to becoming an emperor. Although it was said that heroes made the times also made heroes. Talent, hard work, resources, and the times could not lack any one of them. Now, in Yishuan's opinion, Bien Xiaoya was another kind of continuation of Man Yun back then. Back then, for the sake of becoming an emperor, Lucifer had spent countless years searching bitterly. However, at some point in time, even Ling Fei had become a peak sovereign emperor and was only half a step away from breaking through. Although she was far from EMO and the others, her pursuit of the Tao was not that intense. She would be satisfied if she became a peak sovereign emperor. In the future, it was even possible for her to become a heavenly venerate. This was the effect of the times. In such a great age at its peak, everyone was frantically cultivating and making breakthroughs. This was because everyone was afraid that such a flourishing age would come to an end. They had all experienced the waning martial epic and understood how horrifying it was. The current flourishing age was only obtained by relying on the destruction of the ancient epic. It could not last long. In the blink of an eye, such a flourishing age lasted for millions of years. In these millions of years, the strength of the martial epic rose to another level. The strength of the experts also made breakthroughs. In the divine court, Bien Xiaoya, the original divine court master, was not the strongest. But now, in these millions of years, she finally entered the ranks of peak heavenly venerates. In addition, she cultivated the Azura golden body of virtue. Among the peak heavenly venerates, she was one of the strongest. Although she could not compare to Yi Shiwen's strength in the past, Bien Xiaoya was very satisfied. After all, not everyone could be compared to her master. After all, when she was in the same realm, Yi Shiwen had even killed half-step sovereigns. To the current her, half-step sovereigns were unimaginably tyrannical existences. Even if they were not monstrous half-step sovereigns like her master, peak heavenly venerates still could not contend with them. Being able to contend with them for a while was already the highest evaluation. But after experiencing the failure of West Heavenly Venerate and the others, although many people had entered the ranks of peak heavenly venerates and were several times stronger than the Fortune Divine Dynasty in the past, no one dared to rashly challenge their tribulation. Becoming a half-step sovereign was far more difficult than they imagined. Only after truly stepping into the realm of peak heavenly venerate would she understand. And after millions of years, even the little girl Zihan, who was still by her side in the past, had entered the heavenly venerate realm. In these millions of years, Bien Xiaoya gradually delegated the matters of the divine court to Zihan. Although Zihan's current heavenly venerate cultivation was not considered much in the divine court. Originally, Yimo and the others were already peak heavenly venerates and were ranked among the supreme elders. Even little Yuya had killed her way into the ranks of peak heavenly venerates. In these years, there were also people who had entered the heavenly venerate realm, including the human emperor, Fengyi clan, Ling Fei, and the others. But with a strong backer like Bien Xiaoya, Zihan's authority was still supported by the entire divine court. After all, in a sense, behind Bien Xiaoya was Yi Shiwen's will, and Zihan was Yi Shiwen's descendant. Inside the divine court, in a sky beyond the heavens, Bien Xiaoya was meditating, comprehending the endless heavenly Tao. The powerful heavenly Tao allowed her to comprehend the Tao much faster. At this stage of cultivation, there was very little that Yi Shiwen could guide her. She could only rely on her own efforts to comprehend the heavenly Tao. A master could lead the way, but cultivation still depended on oneself. At this time, in the sky beyond the heavens, there was a spatial fluctuation. It was a young girl with bright eyes and white teeth. Who else could this person be but little Yuya? Because both of them had the word Yu in their names. Busybodies in the outside world also called the grand occasion when the two of them stood side by side as the two moons competing for splendor. Why are you here? Why aren't you in seclusion? Bien Xiaoya glanced at little Yuya, and said. The two of them had known each other since childhood. Now that they had both become peak heavenly venerates, their relationship had always been the best. I'm not as patient as you, little Yuya, said with a smile. Father makes me enter closed-door cultivation every day. How can it be that easy to break through to half-step ruler? Not everyone is like Father. How annoying. Bien Xiaoya sneered. It was not that little Yuya was impatient. It was just that cultivating for millions of years made it easy for one to become an old antique. However, at their level of cultivation, they could no longer advance by leaps and bounds. Comprehending the Tao in one day was simply impossible for them. They could only do it bit by bit. Furthermore, it was very dangerous to break through to half-step ruler. Just looking at those people who failed earlier, it was clear how dangerous it was. The more they accumulated now, the easier it would be for them to break through in the future. Master just wants you to hurry up. Although the martial epic has become stronger and can accommodate more half-step rulers, there is still a limit. It is like how no matter how big a pool is, it will eventually fill up. Bien Xiaoya said, why did no one break through to ruler before Emperor Qin? Wasn't it because the fortune creation heavenly lord alone snatched away the fortune of the world? It's not that I don't know this principle. However, this is not something that can be done overnight. Although you and I are already peak ruler, our accumulations are still far from each other. I'm afraid that we won't make it in time, little Yuya said. Suddenly, just as the two were about to speak, a boundless might enveloped the divine court. The two opened their Dharma eyes and looked over. They saw a figure charging into the primal chaos with demonic chi filling the air. In mere moments, this figure flew into the depths of the primal chaos. Soon after, a horrifying heavenly tribulations might enveloped this figure, covering the entire primal chaos. That's Uncle Mo. He's going to undergo his tribulation? Little Yuya immediately cried out. That towering figure was like a pillar that supported the heavens. Who else could it be but Yimo? Bien Xiaoya did not find this strange. After all, Yimo was the strongest among this group of peak heavenly venerates. It was normal for him to undergo his tribulation first. It was just that there were too few people who had successfully broken through before. She could not help but worry. Just as they were thinking about this, Countless lightning bolts fell from the primal chaos. In an instant, they covered everything. This time, the tribulation was destined to not be hidden. Almost all the forces instantly sensed the existence of this great tribulation. Many people exclaimed in their hearts. After millions of years, someone was finally charging towards this realm. But could he succeed? No one knew. Even the aura of the tribulation awakened Yishiwen, who was in closed-door cultivation in the divine court. He opened his Dharma eyes and looked over. Chapter 38:67. Another person underwent a tribulation. Ordinary heavenly tribulations could not disturb him. Even a heavenly venerate's tribulation would not affect him. However, this tribulation was different. It was a heavenly tribulation of a half-step ruler. The heavenly Daos immediately responded, startling him out of his closed-door cultivation. He opened his eyes and saw a figure undergoing a tribulation in the boundless primal chaos. Boundless lightning struck his body. Even though he was protected by the boundless demonic energy, the lightning still struck his body, turning his body into a bloody mess. It's Yimo. Yishiwen recognized the person who was crossing the tribulation. He had been in closed-door training for thousands of years and had not contacted anyone. Generally, if it was not the most dangerous situation, no one would wake him up from his closed-door training. Of all the experts in the divine court realm, Yimo was the strongest and most well-prepared. Bianxia, Little Yuya, and the others were just juniors. Yishiwen had also undergone a heavenly tribulation of a half-step ruler, so he was very clear on how dangerous it was to undergo such a tribulation. Although the heavenly tribulation they underwent could not compare to Yimo's tribulation. Even with the projection of many rulers, it was still a narrow escape for ordinary people. Even so, Yishiwen still felt that it was appropriate for Yimo to undergo the tribulation now. This was because this was the martial epoc's strongest period. It was also the time when the martial epoch could accommodate the most experts. However, once the martial epoch entered a period of decline, the heavenly Daos would automatically start suppressing those who wanted to make a breakthrough. Those people would also feel that it would be very difficult to make a breakthrough. If the tribulation now was a narrow escape, then it would be a narrow escape after the martial epoch declined. Now, Yishiwen's fusion with the heavenly Daos deepened, and his understanding of the great Tao deepened. He understood why. When a martial epoch was at its peak, it had abundant resources and abundant luck. At that time, it did not matter if there were more experts. However, when the martial epoch declined, the martial epoch would instinctively suppress these cultivators. This was because once these cultivators verified their Tao, they would be able to live as long as the world. They could continuously absorb the spiritual energy of the world and obtain natural treasures. There was no time for them to stop, and there would never be an end. This would result in the accelerated decline of the martial epoch. The martial epoch's will of the heavenly Tao was the will of all living things. All living things wanted to survive and not be destroyed. Hence, the martial epoch would instinctively adjust itself, allowing the martial epoch to survive longer. Therefore, cultivators would find it increasingly difficult to break through to the point that in the end, Tao confirming experts could no longer be seen. The so-called end of days was precisely because of this. Therefore, there was no better time than now to break through. Yishiwen looked at Yimo in the sky. At this moment, Yimo had already transformed into an incomparably gigantic demonic body. It was as if he could split the heavens and earth apart. There was a mirror in his hand that constantly emitted rays of blood-red light to resist the heavenly tribulation. The entire Fortune World's experts were paying close attention to this tribulation because they all wanted to know if Yimo could break the curse and create a miracle. After all, ever since Yishiwen and the Middle Heavenly Venerate, it had been many years since anyone in the martial epoch managed to enter the half-step ruler realm. However, of these two people, one was previously the strongest under the heavens, and the other was the strongest under the heavens later on. Basically, they had dominated an era. In that era, They were unrivaled under the heavens, rendering everyone helpless. After them, those who tried to break through all ended up in failure. This time, whether Yemo could successfully break through or not would perhaps become their benchmark. He would point out a bright path for them. All sorts of horrifying heavenly tribulations descended continuously, all landing on Yemo's body. At the start, Yemo could still block them. However, his injuries quickly worsened. The heavenly tribulations also became increasingly horrifying. At the start, Yemo could still display the ferocious might of a peak heavenly venerate. However, he soon started to feel unwell. In some places struck by the heavenly tribulation, one could even see dazzling golden bones and blood spurting out. The entire situation could be said to be quite miserable. Many people felt like they were about to lose confidence when they saw this. Even someone as strong as Yemo, a peak heavenly venerate existence, was helpless against the heavenly tribulation, not to mention them. However, Yemo still persisted. Even if the heavenly tribulation shattered his flesh and sent bone fragments flying everywhere, he didn't give up. On the contrary, he continuously circulated his cultivation technique to resist. One day, 2 days, everyone thought that Yemo wouldn't make it past the 3rd day, but he did. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day, he endured day after day. Everyone started to see that something was wrong. Yemo's vitality didn't end. No matter how difficult the battle was, his vitality didn't break. Demonic Tao, Nirvana Grand Art. Yishuan watched from afar, and a smile appeared on his face. He knew that Yemo was walking the right path. The most important thing about the heavenly tribulation of a half-step sovereign was that one could endure it. Only by enduring it would there be hope. No matter how horrifying one's combat prowess was in the early stages, it was meaningless. If one couldn't endure it, it would be pointless. Yemo had asked him about the heavenly tribulation before. Although everyone's heavenly tribulation was different, there was no doubt that it had some value as a reference. After that, Yemo went into closed-door cultivation, probably to create his own cultivation technique. At his level, as long as he knew the principles, creating his own cultivation technique was not difficult at all. Many pairs of eyes stared at Yemo, especially those peak heavenly venerates who wanted to advance further and break through to half-step sovereign. Yemo's experience with the heavenly tribulation would be the best reference for them. A great era is coming. When Yishuan saw this, he understood that Yemo was about to succeed. Although Yemo's heavenly tribulation was horrifying, the heavenly Tao didn't want to completely destroy him. During the martial epoch's strongest period, the heavenly Tao was the most forgiving. If the martial epoch entered a declining period, Yemo's heavenly tribulation would only lead to death. There was no way he could succeed. Even if the heavenly Tao didn't allow it, he still wanted to force his way through. Achieving such a feat was no different from a legend. In the past, 2 people had accomplished such a legendary feat. One was Qin Jun, and the other was Yishuan. In the past, the heavenly Tao had broken the balance due to the appearance of too many sovereign emperors. Due to the will of the masses, the heavenly Tao had restricted the appearance of sovereign emperors. However, Qin Jun and Yishuan had torn apart the restrictions of the world and ascended to martial emperor. Only Qin Jun knew how difficult it was. It was practically impossible, yet he managed to do it. However, at that time, he was surrounded by danger, barely escaping death. Now was the best opportunity. As long as Yemo could endure it, there would be a trend of heavenly tribulation. The future era would be the era of half-step sovereigns, an era where half-step sovereigns would descend and half-step sovereigns would rule the world. An unprecedented age of supremacy. The eyes of many peak heavenly venerates lit up when they saw this scene. After all, they had been searching for a way to survive the heavenly tribulation. Now, they might have found a way to survive the heavenly tribulation. If Yemo could create the nirvanic great art, there was no reason they couldn't. Before everyone's eyes, Yemo started to transform and undergo nirvanic rebirth. The nirvanic great art was about to unleash its might. Once again, Yemo was smashed into pieces. His entire physical body exploded, leaving only a small portion of his body. However, a brand new Yemo was born from this small portion of his body. This wasn't due to Yemo's strong recovery ability. Instead, it was another secret art. A brand new body was born from the broken body, undergoing a transformation. It was a kind of nirvanic rebirth. Although the reborn, Yemo's strength hadn't recovered as much as it had at the beginning, everyone still felt that he was much stronger than before. The injuries he had suffered were even more severe, and as time passed, he was still recovering step by step. Even so, when facing the heavenly tribulation, Yemo still couldn't do anything. His physical body exploded again. After another nirvanic rebirth, Yemo painstakingly grew a new body from his broken body. Then, he charged at the heavenly tribulation without stopping. Smart. There can be no construction without destruction. Yishuin said. Heavenly venerates were the peak of an epic. However, at the same time, they were bound to this epic. They cultivated the cultivation techniques of this epic. How could they break free from this epic? Using the nirvanic great art, one step at a time, one would shed off not only the broken body but also the restrictions of the martial epic. Only by shedding most of the restrictions of the martial epic could one ascend to the heavens in one step, becoming a half-step ruler. This was the same as Yi Shiwen's nirvanic rebirth. If one could break free from the restrictions of the martial epic, one would become a ruler, heavenly monarch. Right now, Yemo was in the midst of such a process. Every time the heavenly tribulation exploded Yemo's physical body, he narrowly escaped death. However, at the same time, it severed his connection to the martial epic, allowing him to reconstruct himself. Again and again, Yemo underwent a difficult transformation and rebirth. This continued for a total of 9 times. On the 9th time, just when everyone thought that Yemo would fall, he regained his vitality. Then, the final transformation was complete, and the heavenly tribulation scattered. Yemo, on the other hand, had finally become a half-step ruler. Chapter 38:68. Yemo advanced to half-step ruler. Furthermore, he cleared the heavenly tribulation of half-step ruler before everyone's eyes, becoming the 3rd half-step ruler in the entire martial epic, after Yishuin and the middle heavenly venerate. Yemo was different from the previous 2. After the martial epic entered its peak, he was the first half-step sovereign to appear. He had the significance of transcending the era. Not only did he establish his own sect, but he also created a technique for others, the nirvana technique. Although the process of nirvana could be said to be very dangerous, it did not mean that there was no possibility of passing the tribulation in the end. It was better than no hope at all. They were all Taoists. Even if they knew that they might die, it was better than being trapped in this cultivation realm for the rest of their lives, unable to advance. After Yemo successfully ascended to half-step sovereign Tao immortal realm, he'd moved out of the divine court. Now that he was a half-step sovereign, it wasn't likely that he'd stay in the court any longer. However, he was still a branch of the divine court, so he could still be considered a branch of the divine court. After he left, he brought his own branch of the divine court with him. Then, he united all the demonic sects in the fortune realm and became the demonic lord of the fortune divine dynasty. Immediately, a large banquet was held. Countless people came to offer their congratulations. After Yemo's success, it was as though a new era had begun. After Yemo, in less than 100 years, there was another person who started his tribulation. This person was none other than the city lord of Heaven City of the 10 great divine cities. As one of the most experienced peak heavenly venerates in the entire martial epic, it was normal for him to undergo a tribulation to break through. The middle heavenly venerate of the same generation as him, who could stand on equal footing, had already become a half-step ruler more than 20 million years ago. The Heaven City Lord had fallen far behind. Another horrifying heavenly tribulation enveloped the primal chaos. The Heaven City's city lord started his tribulation. This tribulation shocked many experts of the ancient epic. He just became a demonic lord. And now there was another one? Why did so many half-step rulers suddenly appear in the martial epic? After all, many ancient epics did not have any half-step rulers. However, the martial epic was so strong, producing several of them in a row. Many people were horrified. Ever since that Yi Shiwen appeared, the martial epic had become stronger and stronger. Heaven City's city lord had indeed taken the same path as Yi Mo, undergoing nirvanic rebirth during the heavenly tribulation and using the power of the heavenly tribulation to sever his ties to the martial epic. The Heaven city lord had succeeded. After a dozen nirvanas, the Heaven city lord had finally become a half-step ruler. However, his success was different from Yimo's. He had paid a price for it. In the process of transcending the tribulation, the source of his great Tao was injured, so he didn't undergo rebirth 9 times, but more than 10 times. Because he didn't have enough power to transform, he had no choice but to undergo a few more transformations. These were all proof that he was seriously injured. Everyone even thought that he was really going to die. During the last transformation, he didn't have any signs of life for a whole 10 days. Only after 10 days did he finally show a trace of life, and only then did he manage to endure it with great difficulty. Although the Heaven City Lord had successfully transcended the tribulation, the injuries he suffered this time were terrible. Many people predicted that he wouldn't be able to come out of seclusion for at least 1,000,000 years. Even after 1,000,000 years, it was hard to say. Some people even said that the Heaven City Lord had damaged his Tao foundation and would have a hard time making breakthroughs in the future. Even so, many people still scrambled for the Heaven City Lord. Everyone knew how many benefits there would be if they made a breakthrough. Even an incomplete half-step ruler like the Heaven City Lord was in fact much better than a peak heavenly venerate. Be it strength, status, or reputation, a peak heavenly venerate couldn't compare to him. After the Heaven City Lord, many other peak heavenly venerates tried, but the results were the same. All of them died. They also tried to execute nirvanas during the heavenly tribulation to make a breakthrough, but who could have imagined that they would still fail? They had only undergone nirvanas once or twice, and they had already failed miserably. This made it even more clear how difficult it was to make a breakthrough. It wasn't like the first 2 people succeeding would definitely succeed. In fact, the probability of breaking through to half-step ruler was still very small. An ordinary peak heavenly venerate trying to break through was simply courting death. And the 2 people who succeeded, whether it was the Heaven City Lord or Yi Mo, were already well known among peak heavenly venerates. They weren't people that ordinary peak heavenly venerates could compare to. After that, in the next 100,000 years, it was a magnificent era. Every once in a while, a peak heavenly venerate would attempt to break through to the half-step ruler realm. It was almost as if they were queuing up to break through. However, not everyone succeeded. Most of them failed, with the 3 holy lands taking the lead. They managed to gain a few more half-step sovereigns. The martial ancestor had also produced many talents, especially under the guidance of a peak expert like Qin Jun. Several half-step sovereigns had appeared one after another. In the Fortune God dynasty, other than the middle heavenly venerate, there was another person who unexpectedly stepped into the half-step ruler realm. This person was none other than the current Eastern heavenly venerate, Little Yuer. She had dual identities in the divine court and the Fortune God dynasty. Because of this, her success could be said to have increased the strength of both sides. On the divine court side, aside from Yi Mo, Bian Xiaoya, who was in charge of the divine court, finally stepped into the half-step ruler realm tens of thousands of years ago. This deepened the divine court's accumulations. Aside from her, there were also Yi Qianqian, Hua Menghan, Yi Wudi, the demon master, and several others who had also stepped into the half-step ruler realm. The entire martial epic's half-step ruler realm erupted like a geyser. In this regard, the divine court and martial sect, with Yi Shiwen and Qin Jun presiding over them, were like two locomotives leading the martial epic forward, producing many experts. In a short 100,000 years, the martial epic actually gained more than 10 half-step sovereigns. This thoroughly shocked the entire primal chaos. Even the craziest person in the primal chaos never thought that the martial epic could grow to such a level one day. For a moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. They did not dare to make any small movements, lest they offend the martial epic and be destroyed. However, because of the birth of these half-step rulers, the martial epic entered a period of decline after flourishing for another 100,000 years. The aura of the epic of destruction that had disappeared previously reappeared. As everyone exclaimed in shock, Yi Shiwen came out of closed-door cultivation. He wanted to mend the sky again. Chapter 38-69. After the appearance of so many half-step rulers, the martial epic's heavenly Tao seemed to have reached its end, entering a period of decline. Compared to what many people had expected, the heavenly Tao would flourish for at least several tens of millions of years, which was frighteningly short. But then again, thinking about how many half-step rulers had appeared in the past 100,000 years, everyone felt that it was normal. The world wasn't unchanging, and it wasn't limitless. There was always a limit. Some people could plunder a little more, while others could only plunder a little less. This was because such an age had never happened before. Even when the fortune creation heavenly monarch was in power, there had never been so many half-step rulers at the same time. In fact, after the fortune creation heavenly monarch advanced to ruler, the only active half-step ruler was the previous middle heavenly venerate. It could be said that the great era of that time was not even a third of what it was now. This was also why there was a saying that the fortune creation heavenly monarch was inferior to martial monarchs and Qin monarchs. It was very simple. When the fortune creation heavenly monarch was in power, although the world's strength was consolidated, it did not reach a higher level. However, when martial monarchs and Qin monarchs were in power, the martial epic's strength soared, reaching a peak that had never been seen since ancient times. However, this saying only spread in secret. Just the Fortune Divine Capital alone could not tolerate such rumors. The Fortune Divine Capital's foundation and its ability to contend with the other two holy lands was due to the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. How could they allow others to slander the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch? When the martial epic entered a period of decline, Yi Shiwen appeared again. He wanted to mend the heavens. This was different from the previous time. Last time, he was severely injured by the heavenly Tao's laws. In the end, he even attracted the help of the ancient epic's ruler. However, this time, the strength of the martial epic was not just a little stronger. If another sovereign personage charged in, that would just be seeking death. Even if there were several rulers, they would not be able to do anything to the martial epic. The 10-odd half-step rulers did not look like they were a match for a ruler. However, when they worked together, they could still delay a ruler. This time, the situation was impregnable. This was especially so because Yi Shiwen and Qin Monarch had a good relationship and supported each other. This time, it would be much easier to mend the heavens. Soon, Yi Shiwen flew into the chaos and sat cross-legged in it. Then, a world automatically appeared around his body. What kind of world was that? It could be said to be filled with immortal energy, full of life. Creatures lived freely and happily. Meanwhile, outside this world, countless stars orbited about, as if it was a real world. And Yi Shiwen was sitting upright in this world. At this time, Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. In his eyes, the world was no longer the same as before. Instead, it seemed to be composed of countless rules. Strands of laws and nomological origins appeared in front of him. The 3,000 martial paths were the core of the martial epic. They should have been perfected by now. However, in Yi Shiwen's eyes, they were still far from perfected. There were also loopholes. Although there weren't many loopholes, it was far from perfect. Right now, he wanted to patch up the heavens and patch up the heavenly Tao. This was an extremely terrifying process. Previously, when he was patching up the heavens, Yi Shiwen was caught off guard and suffered a backlash from the rules. He was severely injured. If he hadn't been careful and didn't dare to take large strides forward, he would have been severely injured on the spot. This time, he was even more prepared. He integrated himself into the heavenly Tao. His entire body seemed to disappear from the world as he gradually integrated into the heavenly Tao. Only by integrating into the martial epic's heavenly Tao could he mobilize the power of the heavenly Tao to mend the heavens. Yi Shiwen's entire body emitted a golden light of virtue. This was something from the epic's heavenly Tao and wouldn't be rejected. His entire body seemed to be wandering in the heavenly Tao. During this process, he started to mend the heavens. Yi Shiwen started to form hand seals. Great Tao after great Tao flew out of his body. He had condensed these great Tao over the years. He had been in closed-door cultivation all these years without seeking a breakthrough. This was because he knew that if he wanted a breakthrough, he had to enter the ruler realm. Therefore, he had been condensing the great Tao over the years. He condensed the great Tao that he had comprehended from the wordless Tao steel and used it to mend the heavens. These were great Tao that had once appeared in a certain epoch. They had disappeared due to the change of the epoch. Now, Yi Shiwen had condensed them again. Moreover, he had already circulated them in his body. He could integrate them with the 3,000 martial paths in his body. That was why he dared to try. Every attempt, every release of the great Tao had actually gone through countless calculations and deductions. He didn't release them hastily. Everyone's eyes were on Yi Shiwen. When Yi Shiwen started to mend the heavens, everyone could see countless golden lights falling into that magical world and into Yi Shiwen's body. Every time he mended a great Tao, some golden light of virtue would fall on his body and be absorbed by him. This was a reward from the heavenly Tao. However, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. He was like an ancient well without any ripples. He devoted himself to mending the heavens. With his previous experience, he understood how dangerous it was to mend the heavens. As Yi Shiwen mended the first great Tao, the entire martial epic started to change in an instant. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Ordinary creatures didn't feel it too deeply. However, the cultivators, especially the Emperor Lords and Heavenly Venerables, felt it the most. They could feel that the great Tao had changed. It seemed to have deviated from their initial understanding. It was as if the originally unchanging world had started to change drastically. They looked at Yi Shiwen, who was mending the heavens, with some reverence in their eyes. This was the change brought about by that stalwart figure. They knew that after Yi Shiwen mended the heavens, the martial epic's heavenly Tao would become more obscure and difficult to understand. However, at the same time, it would become more extensive. This meant that the path in front of them had suddenly expanded a lot. The path was unfamiliar, but it was also wider. One great Tao after another was mended. This was a long process. Mending a great Tao would take hundreds of years. Even with Yi Shiwen's cultivation, he didn't dare to relax when it came to this problem, because the result of relaxing might be fatal. As great Tao after great Tao was mended, the martial epic's heavenly Tao actually started to stop declining. Originally, the decline of an epic was unstoppable. In other words, humans couldn't stop it. This was the result of the epic's natural operation. Just like how humans aged and died, the epic was the same. Humans couldn't stop their own aging, illness, and death. The epoch was the same unless it was injected with new vitality. And Yi Shiwen was doing such a thing. All kinds of astronomical phenomena in the entire martial epoch started to appear. It seemed to be corresponding to Yi Shiwen's mending the heavens. Everyone was extremely nervous because Yi Shiwen's success or failure was related to their own interests. Unknowingly, more than a dozen half-step sovereigns had formed a formation around Yi Shiwen to protect him. Although the possibility of the ancient era coming again wasn't very high, they still had to guard against it because they couldn't afford to fail. One great Tao after another. When Yi Shiwen mended 99 great Tao, he started mending the 100th great Tao. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's eyes opened wide. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Numerous wounds appeared all over his body. His skin started to age. His thick black hair also started to turn gray. Martial monarch, many people exclaimed. However, they didn't dare to disturb him. Although they could see that Yi Shiwen was suffering from the heavenly Tao's backlash, they didn't dare to interfere. This was because this domain was too unfamiliar to them. They couldn't even enter it. This had nothing to do with their level. Even sovereigns couldn't enter this domain. Yi Shiwen endured it, and his eyes became clear again. 99 Great Tao. Is this the limit? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but mutter to himself. This time, Xiao Chun had succeeded in mending the heavens. He had mended 99 Great Tao in one go. The entire martial epic had changed drastically. The gloomy aura of destruction had vanished, returning to its peak. Compared to the previous peak, this peak was even stronger and more terrifying. Many people could clearly feel that their Great Tao was more stable. Their future path was wider. Originally, they were like fish jumping in a pond. Now that the pond was a little bigger, there was more space for them to move around. Yi Shiwen had no reason to be unhappy. Compared to the previous time, this success was much better. Moreover, it had been 10,000 years since he started mending the heavens. In these 10,000 years, he didn't move at all. He just kept mending the heavens. The dozen half-step sovereigns also didn't move at all to protect him. The difficulty of completing a Great Tao isn't the same for every Great Tao. Instead, the difficulty increases with every Great Tao I complete. Completing the 99th Great Tao is already my limit. Completing 100 Great Tao is simply unrealistic. A worried look appeared on Yi Shiwen's face. After mending 100 Great Tao, the martial epic could prosper for a while. However, this method didn't solve the root cause. When the next decline came, he would have to think of a way to continue mending Great Tao. However, this was the best method he could think of. He could only wait for the next time. However, before the next heavenly Tao decline, he had to think of a way to become stronger. Chapter 3870. The martial epic succeeded in mending the heavens. This news was like a bomb exploding in the pond, spreading throughout the primal chaos overnight. Before Yi Shiwen had started mending the heavens, many people hadn't felt that there was any possibility of success. Yi Shiwen had failed the last time he had tried mending the heavens. Several rulers had interfered afterward, but Yi Shiwen's mending the heavens had already failed before those rulers had interfered. It was because Yi Shiwen failed first and suffered a backlash from the heavenly Tao's laws that the rulers interfered. Hence, they did not think that Yi Shiwen could succeed from the very start. Since ancient times, they had never heard of anyone succeeding. Destroying the ancient epics and letting the present epic consume the ancient epics to increase the present epic's lifespan was the most common method. However, it could not last long. Although there were many ancient epics, no matter how many there were, their numbers were limited. Furthermore, those ancient epics would not just give up without putting up a fight. There would definitely be a bloody battle. Hence, this method could not last long. Many ancient epics had fallen at the hands of the martial epic. However, there was a reason for them to do so. Hence, those ancient epics could tolerate it for now. If the martial epic mobilized without a reason, the other ancient epics would definitely gang up on it. No matter how strong the current martial epic was, it had no chance of victory against those ancient epics that burned their boats. He actually did it. He is the first person to do so since ancient times. Originally, I thought that he only had strong combat prowess. Unexpectedly, his comprehension of the Great Tao reached such a deep level. Those ancient epics experts were not fools. Naturally, they understood that mending the heavens required a certain level of understanding of the Great Tao. The key is, how did he do it? What fortuitous encounter did he have? Even the ancient epics rulers could not do it. How did he do it? Many half-step rulers found it hard to understand. However, the martial epic successfully extending its lifespan was not a good thing for the ancient epics. The longer the martial epic's lifespan, the more torturous it would be for them. This was especially so for the old monsters who had reached the end of their lifespans. They urgently needed to plunder enough resources from the martial epic's destruction so that they could continue living. Now, they no longer had any hope. This time, the martial epic's lifespan would clearly extend. His period of strength would continue. To them, this was the most terrifying thing. But whether they were willing or not, they had to accept this fact because Yishiwen was still there. As long as he still had the ability to mend the sky, it would be an unsolvable puzzle for them. At this moment, the martial epic was filled with cheers. Yishiwen's prestige surpassed Qin Jun's once again. Although the Qin emperor was strong, he could not make up for the heavenly Tao or extend the life of the martial epic. He could only extend the lives of ordinary creatures. After all, it was very difficult for ordinary living beings to survive the calamity of the heavens and the earth during the replacement of an era. Just like that, after Yishiwen mended the sky, the martial epic flourished for another 10 million years. In these tens of millions of years, several half-step sovereigns appeared in the world. It could be said that the world had truly entered the era of half-step sovereigns. Originally, those peak heavenly venerates either became half-step sovereigns and became the strongest existences in the world, or they could only submit to the might of half-step sovereigns. The world was no longer an era where they could move unhindered. Due to the birth of these half-step sovereigns, more than half of those peak heavenly venerates disappeared. They either successfully became half-step sovereigns or fell in the heavenly tribulation. More than half of them died in the heavenly tribulation, and only a small number of them managed to step into the half-step sovereign realm. Even so, this did not stop those peak sovereigns from wanting to become half-step sovereigns. That was a completely different matter from peak heavenly venerates. Among this group of half-step sovereigns, there was no doubt that the Fortune Divine Capital's Grand Empyrean was the leader. Tens of millions of years had passed, and he had become even more terrifying. He had not been overtaken by the other half-step sovereigns. On the contrary, his cultivation had become even more unfathomable. In the past, there had been half-step sovereigns who felt that they had already become half-step sovereigns. Why couldn't they control the Dragon Court and enter the Fortune Divine Capital? However, a middle heavenly venerate easily defeated him with one palm strike and forced him to flee after sustaining severe injuries. This also made everyone understand that although they were all half-step sovereigns, there was clearly a huge gap between them. Although a middle heavenly venerate was not as strong as Yishiwen, who could defy the laws of nature and fight against sovereigns, he had already reached an unimaginable level on this Tao. Since then, everyone had extinguished the thought of challenging a middle heavenly venerate. A middle heavenly venerate had used absolute strength to protect his dignity. He was a veteran half-step sovereign. These newly advanced half-step sovereigns could not compare to him. As for Yishiwen, who should have been the leader of the half-step sovereigns, no one really considered him a half-step sovereign. Instead, they treated him as a sovereign. This was because they knew how terrifying his strength was. No one could compare to him. This era passed very quickly. In just a few million years, the peak of this era had already ended. The martial epic's heavenly Tao showed signs of decline again. This time, the decline was even more terrifying than the previous time. The density of the destructive matter increased, and the strength of the destruction laws also increased. This was to make up for the price of the heavenly Tao. The stronger the heavenly Tao, the more terrifying it would be when it was destroyed. Just when everyone was panicking, Yishiwen appeared again. He started mending the heavens again. This was the third time he had mended the heavens. Compared to the previous time, Yishiwen was more cautious this time. However, the situation he faced was even worse. The power of the heavenly Tao's backlash was even more terrifying than before. The heavenly Tao was much more complete than the previous time. Because of this, the difficulty of mending the heavenly Tao was much greater. Although Yishiwen had already been prepared for this, he still suffered a backlash from the heavenly ways rules once again. After a heavy blow, all the principles rushed over, and Yishiwen instantly became incomparably old. His whole body was covered with wrinkles, and even his whole body began to shrink. Countless spaces around him collapsed. At the same time, countless karmic fires burned and floods washed over him. It could be said that all sorts of laws exploded around him. It was extremely terrifying. It was as if he was going to be killed in an instant. These laws surged out and instantly injured Yishiwen. Even his golden body of merit, which was difficult to be injured by external forces and didn't take on karma, couldn't endure it. The results of mending the heavens were great, but the karmic backlash was also very great. If it were an ordinary half-step ruler, they might have died immediately. How could they endure it? This time, Yishiwen forcefully endured his injuries and mended the heavenly Tao, allowing the world to return to its peak and no longer decline. However, as a price, he suffered the backlash of the heavenly Tao 3 times. Each time, his life hung by a thread. He had to constantly burn the golden light of merit to recover. It could be said that all the golden light of merit he obtained from mending the heavens was used to recover. He had no choice but to do this. It was not only to guard against enemies who might attack him in the dark. At the same time, he was indeed severely injured and on the verge of death. If he didn't receive treatment, he wouldn't be able to continue mending the heavens. Seeing the price Yishiwen had to pay for mending the heavens, many people exclaimed, "If this continued, how many more times could Yishiwen endure?" If this continued, the golden light of merit he obtained from mending the heavens would not be enough for him to use on mending the heavens. It was not worth it at all. Could it be that mending the heavens had a limit? Many people secretly thought this. Many of the ancient epics' half-step rulers finally saw the light, saw hope. As long as Yishiwen could no longer endure, then the martial epic's struggle to survive would only last for a while. It would not be able to survive forever. To these half-step rulers, the martial epic had already become a resource for their survival. They might fight to the death with anyone who touched this resource. After Yishiwen mended the heavens, the martial epic ushered in a new round of eruptions. Several more half-step rulers appeared. However, the price was that the luck that Yishiwen had obtained from mending the heavens had been completely exhausted in just 1,000,000 years. The world entered a period of decline once more. Facing such a situation, even Yishiwen felt helpless. However, he had no choice but to make an appearance to mend the heavens. He had already noticed that the heavenly Tao's peak was getting shorter each time. If the first time Yishiwen mended the heavens, he could bring the martial epic tens of millions of years of prosperity. The second time, he could only bring the martial epic tens of millions of years of prosperity. The third time, it would be millions of years. The further he went, the harder it would be. The peak would become shorter. In the end, the martial epic could not avoid its destruction. During this process, the birth of half-step rulers would accelerate the martial epic's decline and destruction. Mending the heavens this time was a narrow escape for Yishiwen. The power of the heavenly law's backlash was getting more and more terrifying. His life was in danger every time. He had to rely on the golden light of virtue to save his life. Otherwise, he might have died on the spot. This process continued for a total of 7 times before Yishiwen finally mended the heavenly Tao, preventing the martial epic from continuing its decline. This time, the first thing Yishiwen did after mending the heavens was to merge with the Tao. Then, he prohibited the advancement of half-step rulers. There were too many half-step rulers in the world now. Every one of them could cause the martial epic's destruction much sooner. If this continued, Yishiwen would not be able to hold on. So, he could only prohibit the birth of new half-step rulers. Chapter 3871. After mending the heavenly Taos, the first thing Yishiwen did this time was to prohibit the birth of new half-step rulers. The birth of each half-step ruler could be said to be seizing the fortune of heaven and earth. Who knew how much luck of the martial epic had to be devoured to be born? Although it was not like seizing the fortune of heaven and earth like when a ruler was born, it was still very horrifying. 1 or 2 half-step rulers were not a big deal, but when there were too many of them, It was undoubtedly a huge burden for the martial epic. Now, the martial epic was rushing towards destruction. To a large extent, it was because of the sudden increase in the number of half-step rulers. The other reason was the continuous emergence of experts in the Golden Age. They were not half-step rulers, so they could not devour that much luck. In fact, each person could only devour a small amount of luck. However, when the number reached a certain level, it was still a considerable amount. It was very shocking. It could be said that every cultivator would suffer endless heavenly tribulations in the process of cultivation. These heavenly tribulations were actually the self-protection mechanism of the heavenly Daos. The heavenly Daos continuously eliminated the life forms that tried to live forever, thereby extending the lifespan of the martial epic. However, as time passed, these life forms that existed forever would increase. In the end, the entire martial epic would not be able to bear the burden and be destroyed. Then, the martial epic would naturally enter a new epic. Right now, having too many half-step sovereigns was a huge burden for the martial epic. Although it could make the martial epic stronger than ever, this was the principle of a decline after reaching its peak. Therefore, Yi Shiwen directly tampered with the great Tao, forbidding the birth of half-step sovereigns. Those peak heavenly venerables who had yet to step into the half-step sovereign realm felt as if they had heard a nightmare. They could almost immediately feel that the originally neutral great Tao had instantly become unfriendly to them. Every step forward was too difficult for them. However, could they blame Yi Shiwen at this time? After all, Yi Shiwen was doing this for the long-term survival of the martial epic. If they allowed half-step rulers to appear like this, they would drag everyone down with them. Furthermore, even if they wanted to take revenge, they could not do anything against the colossal holy court. Furthermore, Yi Shiwen's prestige in the hearts of the martial epic's ordinary life forms had reached an unimaginable level. It was not something they could shake. Yi Shiwen did not intend to say much to them. Before he thought of a way to resolve the martial epic's problems, he would not compromise. Yi Shiwen did not intend to say much to them. He did not intend to compromise before he thought of a way to resolve the martial epic's problems. At first, there were still some peak Empyreans who felt that they were lucky and that it didn't matter, even though they also sensed that the heavenly Tao was beginning to shrink and restrict their breakthroughs. But they were still unwilling, especially now that the world was divided into 3 parts, and the celestial court only occupied 1/3 of it. There were still peak celestial venerables who did not belong to the celestial court. However, these heavenly venerables were obstructed by the divine palace as soon as they started to cross their tribulations. Especially for the divine palace, they undoubtedly worshipped Yi Shiwen as an ancestor god. Yi Chun was. Chun, a pillar in the Chun. Chun, the Yi of. Chun the Chun rulers I Chun Tian Yi, and an I and Dao Yi and all. Yi to Yi was. The Yi to say. Chun, ruler, Chun, a Yang, Yi and rulers. This was especially true for the martial epic. Even if the martial epic was destroyed, Yi Shiwen could survive on his own. However, they were going to die. Hence, no one was allowed to discuss this issue. A peak heavenly venerable was about to face his heavenly tribulation, but before the heavenly tribulation could descend, someone made a move. This person was none other than Yi Shiwen, the second person in the divine palace to become a half-step sovereign, devil monarch EMO. He grabbed that peak heavenly venerable to death, and without any reason whatsoever, he pulled out his divine soul and tortured it with demonic flames for eternity. The miserable state of the first peak heavenly venerate did not stop the others. A few more people underwent their heavenly tribulations. However, without exception, they were attacked by half-step rulers. They were all half-step rulers who had undergone their heavenly tribulations in recent years. Now, their interests were tied to Yi Shiwen's. They were not willing to let the martial epic be destroyed like this. They were all counting on Yi Shiwen to mend the heavens. However, they could not help with mending the heavens, nor could they do anything about it. At this time, anyone who wanted to undergo their heavenly tribulation and shorten the martial epic's lifespan would be against them. Furthermore, They did not wish for anyone to share a share of the spoils with them. The more half-step sovereigns there were, the more authority and prestige they would have to share with the sovereigns. Now, in a martial epic, aside from Yishiwen and Qin Jun, who stood aloof and unrivaled, there were only these half-step rulers left. Naturally, they were not willing to have more competitors, even if their competitors had a very low chance of succeeding. These half-step rulers worked together to issue a decree obeying the martial emperor's orders. If anyone dared to undergo their heavenly tribulation during this period, not to mention the heavens, even these half-step rulers would not tolerate them. Furthermore, these half-step rulers were scattered throughout the martial epic. When these half-step rulers worked together, it was enough to teach those peak heavenly venerates who wanted to undergo their heavenly tribulation what was taboo. The martial epic had lasted for hundreds of thousands of years. This time, the martial epic was clearly still at its peak. Without anyone becoming a half-step ruler, the martial epic's decline had slowed down significantly. Many people heaved a sigh of relief. They also praised Yi Shiwen's decision in their hearts. If some peak sovereigns were allowed to advance to half-step sovereigns, it would be a great disaster for the entire martial epic. Deep in the heavenly court, Yi Shiwen, who sat on a tall peak, suddenly opened his eyes, which he had not opened for hundreds of thousands of years. Two beams of light, one black and one gold, tore through the sky of the heavenly court and arrived before Yi Shiwen. They arrived in front of Yi Shiwen, and the black and golden streamers transformed into two figures. The black figure transformed into a 7- or 8-year-old girl. She looked extremely cute and adorable. Beside this girl was a wolf cub. Its fur was suffused with bursts of golden light. It looked extremely mighty. It was an innate mythological beast. Soon, it turned into a little boy who looked about 5 or 6 years old. His entire body glowed golden, as if he was made of gold. First uncle, the little boy and the little girl bowed towards Yi Shiwen and said, "All right, get up." Yi Shiwen laughed loudly and waved his hand. "Many thanks, first uncle." Then the two little fellows sat down beside Yi Shiwen, appearing very intimate. "Why are you two fellows here again?" Yi Shiwen asked. These two little fellows were not outsiders. That little girl was Yi Mo's daughter. After Yi Mo advanced to half-step sovereign and became the ancestor of the martial epic's demonic Tao, he took in a female demon race heavenly venerate of the martial epic as his wife and gave birth to this little fellow. Her name was Yi Tong. As for the other little fellow, he was the child of demon Lord Yi Wudi. After Yi Wudi became a half-step ruler, he rebuilt the Fortune World's heavenly court. It could be said that he became the ancestor of all demons in the Fortune World and had a harem of 3,000 beauties. This little boy was the child of one of Yi Wudi's harem beauties. His name was Yi Anai. Yi Shiwen looked at the two little fellows and thought back to when they were still young. Although that period of time was difficult, it was fun to think about it now. Now, among the brothers, only the demon master little Kuan Peng was still alone. He had no interest in continuing the Kuan Peng race, which was about to be extinct. With his current cultivation of a half-step ruler, he could condense a bunch of Kuan Pengs from his bloodline with a wave of his hand. That would be enough for them to reproduce. He did not need to do it himself. Deep down, he was still a person who loved martial arts. Before he became a half-step ruler, he often killed his way into the primal chaos and fought with the experts in the primal chaos. He even killed the primal chaos creatures. Now, there were only a few in the entire primal chaos that could be his opponent. He was a pain in the ass again. Recently, he even planned to find trouble with the half-step rulers of the ancient era. Ever since the two little fellows were born, their parents often went into closed-door training. Especially Yi Mo and Yi Wudi, who had just completed their Xian cultivation. They did not have much time to spare. Therefore, the two little fellows ran around everywhere. Because of their illustrious background and amazing bloodline, the two little fellows could speak as soon as they were born. After hundreds of years, they had only grown to the age of a normal person. Clearly, it would take a long time for them to fully grow up. Fortunately, there were experts from the demonic cult and the heavenly court watching over them, so nothing would happen. Moreover, everyone in the world knew that the two little fellows were backed by the two terrifying half-step rulers, the Demon Lord and the Demon Lord. Moreover, even if they did not give face to the two, they still had to give face to Yi Shiwen, who was faintly the world's #1 person. Therefore, the two little fellows had always been very safe, and no one dared to make things difficult for them. So boring. Father only makes me go into closed-door training. Closed-door training is boring. Yi and I said first, pouting her pink little mouth. Uncle, can you take us out to play? Father only lets me go to those few places. I'm already tired of playing in the heavenly court. How about we go out to play? Okay. Chapter 38:72. The two little fellows have been born for hundreds of years, but compared to their growth period, they were only a few years old. They were basically still young. So, although they could speak at birth, they were still children. Because of the relationship between Yi Shiwen, Yi Mo, and Yi Wudi, the two little fellows often came to Divine Palace to play. Compared to little Yi, who was considered the same generation, the two little fellows were more willing to play with their big uncle than with their big sister. After all, little Yi had already become a half-step ruler. Her power was no less than the two little fellows' father. Although they were the same generation, they did not have much in common. But Yi Shiwen was different. Perhaps it was because he could not accompany little Yi when she was young, so he felt guilty. Now, he made up for it with the two little fellows. He would grant whatever the two little fellows asked for, basically giving them whatever they wanted. He had also raised the two little fellows into two little overlords. In the entire Divine Palace, only these two little fellows dared to talk to Yi Shiwen like this. That's right, eldest uncle. It's so boring. Why don't you take us out to play? Otherwise, Father and the others will send people to capture us. It's so miserable. Yitong also opened her large, watery eyes and spoke with a pitiful expression. The two little fellows would sneak out when they had time and run to Divine Palace to play. Then, they would be caught by Yi Mo and Yi Wudi. After a while, they would sneak out again. This kept repeating. Running away and being caught had become a part of their lives. Because Yi Mo and Yi Wudi were worried that the two little fellows would delay Yi Shiwen's enlightenment. Others might not know, but how could the two of them not know? Yi Shiwen was currently comprehending the heaven-mending Great Way. This was related to the survival of the entire martial era. If the two little fellows disturbed Yi Shiwen's enlightenment, they would be equivalent to sinners of the martial era. So, once they knew that the two little fellows had sneaked out, they would send people to catch them. Sometimes, they would even take action personally. However, it didn't matter to Yi Shiwen. After all, the two little guys couldn't distract him. In fact, it would prove that his cultivation wasn't good enough if he was distracted by the two little guys with his current cultivation. It was not difficult for him to multitask or even multitask. He could do it easily. Well, I'll take you out to play for 100 years. You don't have to worry about your father catching you. I'll tell them about it. But I'll say it first. You'll go back and practice after you've had enough fun. Do you understand? Yi Shiwen looked at the two little guys and said, Yes. The two little fellows bowed with their hands in front. It was just that when they bowed, they looked especially cute. Uncle, let's go. The two little guys couldn't help it after bowing. After all, they were still children and had not calmed down yet. So Yi Shiwen took the two little fellows of. When Martial Lord Yi Shiwen went out, it was certainly an earth-shattering event. However, to Yi Shiwen, who had already concealed his aura, it was not that earth-shattering. With his cultivation, unless he wanted to be discovered, no one would be able to discover his identity. Yi Shiwen took the two little fellows on a sightseeing tour. He did not use much spiritual power. Basically, they played wherever they went. With Yi Shiwen's cultivation, he did not have to worry about any danger at all. Moreover, although the two little fellows looked very cute, their bloodline was unusual. Even if they had not cultivated properly in the past hundreds of years, they could still kill a deity with a casual punch. This made Yi Shiwen feel very emotional. When he was cultivating, in order to cultivate to become a deity, it could be said that he had gone through many difficulties and dangers. If he met these two little fellows at that time, he probably would not be able to defeat them. However, this kind of emotion only disappeared in an instant because each generation was stronger than the previous one. This itself was a matter of course. However, the two little fellows only had a greater innate advantage. In terms of future achievements, it would be difficult to compare with their father, let alone surpass him. However, the later generation had their own destiny, so he did not care that much. This trip to the mountains and rivers lasted for hundreds of years. Yi Shiwen's leg strength was enough for him to travel across the entire fortune world. His magic power was basically used on the journey. So, he didn't use any magic power when he traveled to various places. In fact, he didn't need to use any magic power at all. The further he walked, the more Yi Shiwen felt that his heart was also getting farther and farther away. Suddenly, one day, 100 years finally came, and the two little fellows were very reluctant to leave him. Yi Mo and Yi Wudi personally came to take the two little fellows away. However, Yi Shiwen rejected them. Don't be in a hurry to take them away. Let me take them. There will be benefits for them. Yi Shiwen said, "What are you planning to do?" Yi Mo could not help but be a little puzzled. He was not worried that Yi Shiwen would bring them to bad things, but he was very curious about what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. "What? I am preparing to cross the tribulation," Yi Shiwen said lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Mo and Yi Wudi both turned to look at him. Cross the tribulation? Yi Shiwen had cultivated to this point. So, there's only one tribulation that could make him speak of it in such a serious manner. And that was the sovereign's tribulation. It had been tens of millions of years since Yi Shiwen had become a half-step ruler. From all aspects, it was normal for him to cross the tribulation. Although the number one half-step ruler in the martial epoch was a middle heavenly venerable, in reality, everyone knew that person should be Yi Shiwen. However, he was too strong, so few people ranked him among the half-step rulers. That would be unfair to the other half-step rulers. Now that Yi Shiwen had joined the ranks of the half-step rulers, they could basically be divided like this: Yi Shiwen and the other half-step rulers. Yi Shiwen and the other half-step rulers could be divided into two tiers. The two naturally understood that if they were in Yi Shiwen's shoes, they would not be able to compare. They were also half-step rulers, but the gap between them and Yi Shiwen was like heaven and earth. With Yi Shiwen's cultivation, crossing the tribulation to become a ruler was only a matter of time. Everyone guessed that he would definitely cross the tribulation and become a ruler. It was just a matter of time. And now, Yi Shiwen was finally going to step into that level. "Are you confident?" Yi Mo asked. "If not, it's best not to try. Otherwise, if something unexpected happens, you might as well forget about it." Yi Shiwen nodded and said, "I'm sure. If I wasn't sure before, then I'm sure now. I know what you're worried about. I also know that I carry the hopes of countless people in the martial epoch. I can't die so easily. However, it's precisely because of this that I haven't tried to cross the tribulation yet. But at this point, I can only choose to cross the tribulation. You all know about the current situation of mending the heavens. The last time I mended the heavens, I was severely injured, and I vomited out everything I gained." Yi Shiwen said, "Besides the fact that after mending the heavens a few times, it's getting more and more difficult to complete the heavenly Tao. More importantly, my hands can't keep up. Mending the heavens will require more and more strength, so I have to achieve the Tao. Only when I become a ruler can I continue mending the heavens." Aren't you forcing yourself like this? The backlash from mending the heavens is too great. The backlash from the great Tao laws is something that even a ruler would not dare to try. Otherwise, just ignore it. Even if the martial epoch is destroyed, we still have the ability to protect our loved ones until countless epochs later. Yi Wudi said directly. Compared to the survival of the martial epoch, he was more concerned about Yi Shiwen's life and death, especially since mending the heavens was such a dangerous thing. If it really came to that, he would rather not mending the heavens. Even if the martial epoch was destroyed, they could still survive for more than 10 epochs. They still had time. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. It's not like I didn't gain anything from mending the heavens all these years. I didn't just put an effort. When mending the heavens, I was also peeking into the structure of the great Tao. If I had a 20% success rate before mending the heavens for the first time, then I'm at least 80% or 90% confident now. There won't be any problems. Yi Shiwen said. Then you still have to be careful. Yimo said worriedly. Don't worry, I won't do anything I'm not confident in. You two can rest assured and let me take these two little guys away. When they come back, they'll definitely surprise you. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. He held one of the little guys in one hand and flew into the distance. Stepping on the escape light, they disappeared in an instant. Where are you going? Yi Wudi asked. I'm going to make up for the last part I'm not confident in. Yi Shiwen's voice came from the sky. Yi Wudi and Yi Mo looked at each other and didn't say anything in the end. These two little guys are lucky to be able to follow Big Brother. Even little Yu didn't have the chance to follow Big Brother and cultivate with him when she was young. Yi Wudi said. His words were filled with mixed feelings. He thought of a time when they first met. It was already many years ago. It's because he left too early that little Yu didn't enjoy her father's love. That's why he wants to make up for it with these two little guys. Yimo said with a sigh. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. It's rare that we have time today. Come on my place. Okay. Chapter 3873. When Yi Shiwen reappeared, he was in the boundless primordial chaos. One of his hands was holding a child's hand. The two children's cultivation wasn't high enough to enter the primordial chaos, so this was their first time in it. They were very excited and interested in everything they saw. After a while, however, they lost interest. After all, there wasn't much to see in the primordial chaos. Everything was gray and hazy, and they couldn't even tell north, south, east, west, up, down, left, or right. The two children began to doze off. They were still children, after all. It was difficult for them to stay focused. But very soon, an incomparably huge world continent appeared in front of the three of them. From afar, the endless world looked like an extremely dazzling star, which finally piqued the interest of the two little fellows. How dare you? Who dares trespass on the eternal sacred land's territory? A loud voice boomed out from the endless world. Yes, this endless world was none other than the eternal sacred land. Several powerful figures flew out of the eternal sacred land. They were about to make a move, but when they saw Yi Shiwen, they were scared out of their wits. Why is this Grim Reaper here? Many more figures flew out after these powerful figures. Although the eternal sacred land was large, it wasn't particularly large for these celestial venerables and half-step rulers. They immediately knew what was going on. They thought it was some ignorant fool who dared to trespass on the eternal sacred land. Even if he was a half-step ruler, he'd still be dead. Only a ruler would be able to do as they pleased in the eternal sacred land. After the eternal sage lord, more people had joined the eternal sacred land, but all of them had been rulers without exception. Although this Grim Reaper wasn't a ruler, he was no different from one in the eyes of many. At the very least, rulers might not have killed other rulers, but he'd killed far more than one. Is he planning to join the eternal sacred land? Someone couldn't help but exclaim. They'd seen it all too often. Many sovereigns had taken over the eternal sacred land's territory throughout its history. Originally, they wouldn't have thought that way. After all, everyone knew that Yi Shiwen was the ruler of the martial epoch. Wouldn't he be more comfortable in the eternal sacred land? However, things were different now. Everyone knew that a second ruler had appeared in the martial epoch. As the saying went, two tigers cannot share one mountain. With another strong competitor, one of them had to leave. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen must have been at a disadvantage when he fought with King Qin. Now that he was chased out, he had no choice but to find another place. In comparison, was there a better place than their eternal holy land, aside from the martial epoch? However, even the loser of the battle between the two tigers was not someone they could look up to. Why has Martial Lord Wu come to the eternal sacred land? Someone asked loudly. I came to borrow something, Yi Shiwen said. Many heaved a sigh of relief at Yi Shiwen's words. It was much better as long as Yi Shiwen wasn't here to fight them. If a fight broke out, the eternal sacred land might be able to drive Yi Shiwen out, but the price would be too great. It might even cost them their lives. "What does Martial Lord Wu want to read?" someone asked. "I know. Many rulers have come to the eternal sacred land in the past, so I want to read through their records." Yi Shiwen said. Many people's first reaction was to refuse. After all, the records and notes left behind by their patriarchs were the most precious of treasures. No amount of wealth could buy them. However, they quickly realized that the person in front of them was not someone they could refuse just because they wanted to. "What if we don't agree?" someone asked. "Then I'll beat you until you agree. Anyone who stops me will die." Yi Shiwen said coldly. "Very well, please come in." After realizing that they had no power to stop Yi Shiwen, even the most stubborn of old men could only agree. Yi Shiwen entered the eternal sacred land with the two little fellows as if he were on a sightseeing tour. He was in no hurry. They walked toward the inheritances of the rulers one after another. These sovereigns would leave behind many relics when they took over the sacred land, containing many classics and personal notes. These were the most valuable treasures of the sacred land, and were usually kept in the hands of the various factions in the sacred land. Now, they had to open them up to Yi Shiwen. However, they were used to it. Every ruler who had come to the eternal sacred land had read these records and notes. This was a very normal thing to begin with. Yi Shiwen took the two little fellows with him as they walked. He even helped them open their mind's eye, allowing them to observe the workings of the great Tao as they looked at the scenery. After all, the eternal sacred land itself didn't exist. It had been created by the eternal sage with great power. Later, the various rulers had reinforced and expanded it. As a result, there were various types of laws everywhere. They were even more obvious than in the martial epic. This was why the eternal sacred land had produced so many experts. However, because the laws were incomplete, it was difficult for even rulers to complete them. As a result, it was difficult for rulers to produce experts. However, there was never a lack of half-step rulers. The two little fellows looked around as they walked. They could feel their cultivation growing at a rapid pace. Their cultivation was already very fast to begin with, but now it felt like they were flying. However, there were more benefits to be had in the future. There were many things they couldn't understand at the moment, but they would be imprinted in their souls. Slowly, as their cultivation increased, they would naturally be able to understand them. By then, even if their cultivation was very low, they would still be able to improve by leaps and bounds. This was Yi Shiwen's gift to the two little fellows. Finally, Yi Shiwen stopped at the first ruler's relic. He stayed here for a full 3 years, reading the notes and comprehending the great Tao at the same time. With the help of the wordless Tao stele, his comprehension was incredibly fast. Other rulers might need hundreds of years to understand, but Yi Shiwen was able to do so in just a few years. Then, he moved on to the next place. Just like that, he led the two little fellows around. In a short 100 years, he had finished reading all the records and notes in the eternal sacred land. Not only did Yi Shiwen read them himself, but he also imprinted many of the key points of the classics into the two little fellows' souls so that they could comprehend the great Tao in the future. Countless celestial sovereigns gaped at the sight. Tears streamed down their cheeks. Just how lucky were these two little fellows? Their future prospects were limitless. They'd been sitting in the ruins for many years, but it had been difficult for them to comprehend even a tiny bit of the classics. The great Tao of a ruler was too profound for them to comprehend. Now, however, Yi Shiwen was simplifying the most complicated of the great Taos. He was teaching the two little fellows that this kind of treatment was unheard of, not even for the sons of rulers. After leaving the eternal sacred land, Yi Shiwen made his way to the everlasting sacred land. The everlasting sacred land had already made their preparations. After all, 100 years was more than enough time for them to gather information from the eternal sacred land. They didn't dare to stop Yi Shiwen in the face of his strength. After all, if they tried to stop Yi Shiwen at this time, it would be nothing more than death. He'd killed a ruler just like that, let alone a bunch of half-step rulers. In Yi Shiwen's eyes, they were no different from the weeds on the side of the road. After entering the everlasting Holy Land, Yishuan took the two of them out to play and gain enlightenment. Time passed quickly. Another 100 years went by, during which time he finished reading all of the personal letters and ancient records of the various rulers of the everlasting Holy Land. Yishuan was like a giant furnace. He studied the great Taos of many rulers, even those of half-step rulers, and began to refine them. In order to refine something of his own, Yishuan's understanding of the great Taos increased exponentially, reaching a level that ordinary people couldn't even begin to imagine. But Yishuan didn't stop. He began to follow the primordial chaos to find the ancient epics. Although the ancient epics were well hidden and ordinary half-step rulers would have a hard time finding them, it wasn't a problem for Yishuan at his current level. They had nowhere to hide, and they weren't even sacred lands. They had no way to resist Yishuan, so they had no choice but to compromise. They offered their patriarchs scriptures and letters for Yishuan to read. Fortunately, Yishuan didn't intend to start a massacre. After reading the scriptures, he left with the two little fellows. Just like that, Yishuan visited the eras one after another. One after another, the great Tao was integrated into his body. His aura became more and more ethereal and restrained, but also became more dangerous. If Yishuan was like a sharp blade before, then he was like a sword hidden in its scabbard now, but his power was even more terrifying. Yishuan finally called Yi Mo and Yi Wudi back after hundreds of years. He took the two little guys away. He was about to undergo his tribulation. The terrifying tribulation clouds appeared in the primordial chaos, alarming all the ancient existences there. What kind of tribulation is this? Chapter 38:74. Many people were startled by this sudden heavenly tribulation. The horrifying aura spread into the primal chaos, startling many half-step sovereigns who were still in closed-door cultivation. However, when they opened their eyes and looked into the primal chaos, they saw Yishuan's figure, and they somewhat understood what was going on. If it was him, then it was normal. In the past tens of millions of years, one person had turned the entire primal chaos upside down. No one had ever been able to do this. Not even the legendary fortune creation heavenly monarch had been like him, regarded as a great malefic star by the various great epics. In the end, he still underwent the tribulation. Many half-step sovereigns could not help but sigh. If it was any other half-step ruler who was about to undergo tribulation, they would always say that the other party was just lucky and that it wasn't a big deal. But if this person was Yishuan, then they had nothing to say, because that person didn't have any luck in crossing the retribution. On the contrary, he waited until this time to finally cross the retribution. This was something that countless people couldn't think of. Many people guessed that Yishuan did not want to undergo the tribulation so easily because he was not completely confident. He carried too many things on his shoulders, and he could not afford to fail. If he failed, the glory of a martial epic would not be completely gone, but it would not be wrong to say that half of it would be gone. Although Qin Jun was very strong, his deterrence could not compare to Yishuan, who had killed several sovereigns. That was the true fierceness of his name. Now, Yishuan was finally going to give it a try. He was definitely completely confident. Furthermore, he had just traveled the entire primal chaos, searching for the notes and ancient records of the various sovereigns. His understanding of the great Tao had reached an extremely horrifying level. He stood in the primal chaos like a god of creation, wanting to carve out a new world in the primal chaos. Rumble. Countless heavenly tribulations fell down like rain. Each of those horrifying lightning tribulations could blast a large hole in the primal chaos. The primal chaos was already nothing, but these lightning tribulations could still blast a large hole in the void. One could easily imagine how horrifying they were. Yishuan wasn't afraid in the face of these thunder tribulations. He wasn't like Qin Jun when he was crossing the tribulation. He didn't choose to face all of them head-on. He opened his hand, and his hand was like a pillar that supported the heavens. It shot up into the sky, and the terrifying lightning tribulation that was descending was actually caught by his hand, forming the word thunder. The character Thunder was a character formed by the source of the Great Path. It was not a character of any epic. However, anyone with a certain level of cultivation would be able to understand what this character was with just a glance. It directly entered into their souls. He actually refined the heavenly tribulation into the original Tao character. How terrifying is he? Many people were shocked to see this scene. They were also shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. Just like that lord from the Thunder era? No, he's even more terrifying than that lord. Just where did he cultivate the law of lightning to such a level? A half-step ruler cried out in alarm. Many of the half-step rulers had lived for more than 10 epochs. They had seen several rulers' tribulations, but they had never seen a main character like Yi Shiwen when crossing the tribulation. No matter how the tribulation fell, not only was it unable to harm him, but he had even refined the power of the lightning into his own Tao character. Lightning bolts rained down from the sky, and every single one of them was terrifying enough to cause the half-step sovereign realm experts' expressions to change. If they were in Huang Xiaolong's shoes, a single lightning bolt would be enough to severely injure them. 2 lightning bolts were more than enough to kill them. Unless a ruler personally took action, there was no way they could resist it. But this was the heavenly tribulation for becoming a ruler. How could there be such a terrifying lightning tribulation? Many people thought of the ruler from the Thunder era. When he used his full strength, the power was roughly the same as the power of these heavenly tribulations. But now, Yi Shiwen casually withdrew these attacks. One could imagine that Yi Shiwen's current cultivation was far stronger than that ruler from the Thunder era. The heavenly tribulations continued to fall from the sky, as if they would never stop. However, these heavenly tribulations that were constantly descending would eventually be collected by Yi Shiwen. Then, he would constantly integrate them into his Thunder character, making it more and more terrifying. This Thunder character wasn't just a manifestation of the great Tao laws. It also contained extremely terrifying energy. If you were to throw this Thunder character out, even a ruler would be blown to death on the spot. Many people thought of this terrifying possibility. When they looked at Yi Shiwen again, they only felt fear. When others crossed the tribulation, they had to go all out. It was fine if they could endure it, but how could they have other thoughts? But Yi Shiwen still had the mind to refine a trump card while crossing the tribulation. It was too frightening. In other words, the current heavenly tribulations that could seriously injure an ordinary ruler hadn't forced him to use his full strength yet. Many people thought of this and felt a chill run down their spine. It was too frightening. Yi Shiwen didn't seem to think of the other's fear. He continued to refine his Tao character. Just as everyone thought, he was indeed refining a trump card. He was preparing for a possible battle in the future. His enemy was too powerful. He was unprecedentedly powerful. He had to prepare in advance. The heavenly tribulations seemed to be angered by Yi Shiwen. In the chaos, countless ancient eras began to rise with a terrifying aura. A terrifying river of time appeared in front of everyone. This river of time ran through the ages. It wasn't just an ancient era. In fact, an ancient era was just a section of this terrifying river of time. One ancient era after another joined together to occupy this long river of time. This was the Chaos River of Time. Many half-step sovereigns were shocked when they saw this scene. Even when the fortune creation Heavenly Lord was crossing the tribulation, there weren't such terrifying signs. This heavenly tribulation is too terrifying. He can't possibly cross it like this. The first heavenly tribulation since ancient times. Immediately after, everyone saw the chaotic river of time trembling. Then, an extremely terrifying figure walked out from it. It was none other than the puppet Heaven Monarch. The puppet Heavenly Lord walked out of the chaos river of time. He was extremely terrifying. Wherever his gaze landed, there was unimaginable destructive power. Looking at the scene before him, the puppet Heavenly Lord's expression was extremely terrible. Given his cultivation state, he could immediately tell that the puppet Heavenly Lord was already dead. At this time, he was just pulled back from the chaos river of time by the power of the great path of chaos. And the person who killed him was this man in front of him. How dare you kill me in the future? The puppet Heavenly Lord was extremely angry. So what if I killed you? Now that you've come out again, you'll be killed by me again. Yishuan looked at him coldly. He didn't take the puppet Heavenly Lord seriously. The puppet Heavenly Monarch was enraged, but he was also shocked. Just who was this person? Why was there such a terrifying lineup when he was going through the heavenly tribulation? The heavenly Tao even had to revive itself from the river of time to suppress this person. Today, you won't have a good ending. Even if you can escape today, when I return to the past, I can kill you at that time. You'll still die. The puppet Heavenly Lord shouted loudly. Do you still have a chance? Even if you all manifest today, you'll still die. Moreover, when I achieve the great path, there will be no past, no future, only the present. You want to kill me? How is that possible? Yishuan sneered. As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed towards the void with his big hand. He directly grabbed a thunderbolt that fell from the sky and threw it out. The puppet Heavenly Lord had no time to dodge and was directly bombarded. In other words, the power of this thunderbolt was too terrifying. Its speed was also extremely fast. It was not something that ordinary people could contend with. Bang! The puppet Heavenly Monarch let out a blood-curdling scream and was sent flying backward. His body suddenly exploded. He was not a projection. He had truly awakened from the river of time, but he still couldn't stop it. Yishuan's left hand slashed down like a holy sword. It directly destroyed the spirit of the puppet Heavenly Lord and erased his great path imprint. The puppet Heavenly Lord had fallen. Under the situation where he was killed by Yishuan once, he was killed again after being manifested by the river of time. Everything happened too fast. No one could react to what had happened. It could be said that all of this happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. When they reacted, the puppet Heavenly Lord had already fallen. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. How could it be so terrifying? That's a sovereign realm master. How could he kill him so easily? Oh my God, I must be seeing things. This is impossible. How strong is he now? I'm afraid we can't measure his strength with our strength anymore. After Yishuan killed the puppet Heavenly Lord, a terrifying aura recovered almost immediately. Those were the Dominator Heavenly Lords who had once shone in the long river of chaos history. Some of them hadn't even died yet. They had been revived all of a sudden. One powerful existence after another came out of the river of time and surrounded Yishuan. Martial Monarch, you're going against the heaven. It's time to end it, all the Dominators said in unison. Chapter 3875. Dominators with tyrannical auras surrounded Yishuan. Every one of them had remarkable magical powers. They had been forcibly pulled here from the chaotic river of history. It wasn't like Qin Jun's tribulation, where it was only a shadow and a great Tao imprint. Even so, it was already terrifying. Not to mention that their real bodies were here to kill Yishuan. There had never been such a terrifying heaven's tribulation in history, but there had never been someone who could jump levels like Yishuan. As long as he passed the heaven's tribulation, he would immediately enter the late stage of the Dominator realm. Even a triple jump wouldn't be this fast. However, Yishuan had tempered himself for a long time before this, and only he knew how much he had tempered himself. A terrifying battle was on the verge of breaking out. Each of these Dominators had been pulled out of the river of history. Although they weren't at the peak of their lives, when their numbers reached this level, it was still terrifying. Rumble. Everyone could only see the entire primordial chaos collapsing. In an instant, it was like the end of the world. Under the heavenly tribulation, everything was destroyed. Time, space, heaven and earth, the universe. Nothing existed. Everything was meaningless. Oh my God, is it really the end of the world? This day will probably go down in history. With so many Dominators attacking at the same time, if the heaven's tribulation hadn't limited the range and power, I'm afraid the edge of the universe would have been destroyed. That's really the end of the world. There's no point running. Fortunately, the dominators have restrained themselves and don't intend to destroy the world. Yi Mo and Yi Wudi, who were watching from afar, were extremely worried. With Yi Shiwen's strength, ordinary heaven's retribution wouldn't pose any difficulty to him. However, there were so many sovereigns here. Even though Yi Shiwen had killed a few sovereigns before, he had never faced such a dangerous situation. "You'll be fine, right?" Yi Wudi said anxiously. Just looking at this kind of battle made him tremble with fear. It was impossible for him to be of any help at all. His strength had improved too much over the years, but Yi Shiwen's opponents were getting more and more terrifying. His improvement was like doing useless work. He couldn't help at the moment. It'll be fine. Since he chose to pass the heaven's tribulation, he must be prepared. Yi Mo was also worried, but at this time, he could only choose to believe in Yi Shiwen. After all, he couldn't understand a battle of that level. At this time, the battle had become even more intense. Dominator Dao tools from various ancient eras flew out and into the hands of their masters. Then, they cooperated with their masters and suppressed Yi Shiwen. It was terrifying to the extreme. It was like the end of the world. Even an ordinary ruler would have no choice but to kneel when faced with such a lineup. The only choice they had was how long they could kneel. Bang! Yi Shiwen punched through the chest of a ruler. That person was the Storm Heaven Monarch. His eyes were wide open as he was killed by Yi Shiwen for the second time. At this time, there was still a gap between him and the Storm Heaven Monarch at his peak when he was killed by Yi Shiwen. At that time, he couldn't even stop Yi Shiwen, let alone now. He was killed again. His eyes flashed with doubt. At this time, Yi Shiwen didn't care about the Storm Heaven Monarch. He couldn't care so much right now. Although his current combat strength was comparable to a mid-level ruler, his body was still at the level of a half-step ruler. In a one-on-one fight, it wouldn't be obvious. However, when a number of opponents reached a certain level, his weakness as a half-step ruler would be immediately exposed. The difference in the nature of life existed. It would always exist. He could kill a ruler with one punch, but similarly, the attacks of those rulers could also leave fatal wounds on his body. Although those rulers weren't at their peak, their power was still very terrifying when they used their Dominator Dao tools. Yi Shiwen's body was pierced more than once. Even with a strong body, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be injured. His flesh was lacerated everywhere, and his bones could be seen. Sword light, saber light, all kinds of magical powers, and great Dao nomological laws greeted Yi Shiwen's body. Ordinary people would definitely be dead, but Yi Shiwen was different. His body kept brushing with the golden light of virtue. Every time it brushed, his body would completely recover. Damn, how much golden light of virtue does he have? How many ancient eras did he destroy? Otherwise, how could he have so much golden light of virtue? Many rulers cursed in their hearts. What was Yi Shiwen doing? It wasn't that they hadn't seen the golden light of virtue before. In fact, they had obtained a lot of it. For ordinary people, the golden light of virtue was unattainable. For them, it wasn't particularly mysterious or difficult to obtain. There was just too much golden light of virtue. It could even be said that it was ridiculously much. Yi Shiwen was only able to persist until now because he had a lot of golden light of virtue. I have a lot, and you can't do anything about it. Yi Shiwen's accumulation of so many years had finally erupted. He had destroyed many ancient eras. Although he hadn't led some of them, he was still the lord of the divine palace. So, the biggest reward would naturally fall on him. In addition to the merit he had obtained from continuously mending the heavens, it was unimaginable to ordinary people. Over the years, most of what he had done was for the sake of overcoming the tribulation this time. How could he be defeated by these people so easily? You think you can stop me with just you? You were more or less at your peak, but you're still far from it now. Anyone who stops me will die. Yi Shiwen formed a martial supreme seal with one hand and smashed it down continuously. His other hand formed a Dao sword and slashed it down continuously. He only attacked and didn't defend. There was just too many rulers, so he simply gave up. In any case, there was a lot of golden light of virtue. Although the merit he had obtained today was enough to make countless people feel distressed, the price he had to pay was death if he didn't succeed. Compared to death, this little bit of golden light of merit was nothing. Yi Shiwen was also incomparably terrifying when he went all out. Even if a ruler stood in front of him, he wouldn't be able to resist more than a few moves before being killed. Then, he used the golden light of virtue to recover from his injuries before pouncing on the next ruler to kill. At this moment, the half-step rulers watching in the primal chaos were all dumbfounded. They had seen ferocious tribulations before, but they had never seen one this ferocious. Earlier, when Yi Shiwen covered the sky with one hand and collected all the lightning tribulations, it was already very horrifying. However, compared to this heroic scene of casually slaughtering rulers, it was like heaven and earth. Although Yi Shiwen was often severely injured, and his body had exploded more than once or twice, he recovered in the blink of an eye as if he hadn't been injured at all. For him to be able to do this with a half-step ruler's body was already very shocking. Why is the luck of the martial epic so vigorous? Why did such a demonic genius appear? A half-step ruler could not help asking. They felt that even the words talented genius could not describe the current Yi Shiwen. He was simply a monster, a demonic genius. Could it be that the martial epic can really exist forever? That's impossible. The martial epic can't really exist forever. Even if they want to, the rulers can't really let them exist forever. That's true. Although he's killing everyone, he's not facing the rulers at their peak. It doesn't mean that he's a martial monarch. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was still undergoing his tribulation. The various rulers could not stop him. Facing such a tyrannical opponent, who could even be called a demonic genius, these rulers all had different reactions. Some felt anger and humiliation. Some felt their blood surging with fighting spirit, and some smiled. They'd been pulled out of the long river of history by the heavenly Tao and had to complete this task. However, they were the strongest group of people since time immemorial. Naturally, they were not puppets that could be manipulated by others. Hence, they all had different reactions. This battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The terrifying battle caused the entire chaotic universe to be restless. Although the range of the heavenly tribulation was limited, its terrifying aura continued to spread. In particular, the celestial venerables of the various ancient epics received the news and rushed over. Some rulers had already fallen in the long river of history. At this moment, these celestial venerables could still see their era's rulers fighting under the heavenly tribulation. They could only feel tears flowing down their cheeks. Even though they knew that these were flowers in the mirror and the moon in the water, summoned by the heavenly Tao from the long river of history, it was still the same. In this world, death was eternal. Once one fell, there was no way to come back. Reincarnation and rebirth were forever just a legend. Even if some people were reborn, it was only because they were lucky. Not everyone had that kind of opportunity. They only knelt down in the distance, sincerely and sincerely. This was because many of these rulers were giving their all for their era. As the battle became more and more intense, the number of rulers also decreased. Yi Shiwen killed them one by one. This process was very difficult. Although Yi Shiwen's movements were very fast and imposing, no one thought that Yi Shiwen's victory was easy. After all, Yi Shiwen had fought with his life on the line. He didn't know how many times he had been killed. If it had been someone else, they would have died long ago. This kind of battle was too terrifying. However, the more he fought, the stronger Yi Shiwen's aura became. The more rulers he killed, the easier the pressure on him became. His path became clearer and clearer. It was as if he could see the road ahead of him. By the time he killed the last ruler, 3 days and 3 nights had already passed. Chapter 3876. By the time Yi Shiwen had killed all the rulers, 3 days and 3 nights had passed. Yi Shiwen's aura had climbed to the pinnacle. No one had ever been as strong as he was in this domain. Every time he killed a ruler, his aura would grow stronger. This was a kind of aura, and when this aura grew to a certain degree, it would become a vast and majestic aura that no one could stop. The further he went, the more terrifying he became. The rulers he killed had become a part of his force. Towards the end, no ruler could withstand more than a few moves from him. It was even to the extent that at that moment, he even had the misconception that there was no one in the world who could withstand a single blow from him. Although he knew that it was just an illusion, it was this vast and mighty aura that gave him this illusion. No one could match him, and no one could match him. After he killed all the rulers, he sat down cross-legged. Countless laws of the heavenly Tao descended and entered his body. Or rather, it should be said that they were descending in a frenzy. Those were ruler-level laws. If he wanted to cross the final hurdle, he couldn't do it without this step. It was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to upgrade his own laws to the ruler level, and to do so under heavenly tribulation. Yi Shiwen had 3,000 martial Daos in his body, and by relying on them, he was invincible. Among half-step sovereigns, it was hard to find a match. In fact, by relying on these 3,000 martial Daos, he was able to exchange blows with sovereigns. But now, it had become a hindrance to Yi Shiwen's path. He had to dig out the 3,000 martial Daos one by one. He would be drenched in blood, transforming them, refining them, and advancing them to a higher realm. Even the half-step rulers couldn't bear to watch. Yi Shiwen was having a hard time. He was going through the last step of transformation. Countless great Tao laws were descending on his body. If he wasn't careful and didn't fully absorb them, he would be seriously injured. Yi Shiwen's body would often inexplicably explode into pieces, and then he would recover after a golden light flashed. After a while, a hole would suddenly appear in his body, but it would quickly be repaired. Just like that, he was constantly being injured and then healed. He wasn't any weaker than he had been during his battle with the Sovereign Lord. Just looking at him from a distance was enough to tell how terrifying he was. 4 half-step sovereigns and sovereigns, it was very difficult to truly injure their physical bodies. But if they did, it would be a heavy injury. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was constantly getting injured and was constantly drawing out the principles. It was too terrifying to watch. This tribulation transcendence method is also unprecedented and will never be repeated in the future. One of the half-step sovereigns said in shock. I've seen the transformation of a sovereign Dharma body, but I've never seen such a ferocious transformation. How can ordinary sovereign's avatar be this terrifying? I bet that he'll be a mid-stage sovereign the moment he breaks through. I think it's more than that. Many half-step sovereigns had mixed feelings as they watched Yi Shiwen's tribulation. It would be a lie to say that they weren't moved by the sight of Yi Shiwen extending the lifespan of an era and going through an unprecedented tribulation. Every step Yi Shiwen took was difficult, but every step he took was equally shocking, leaving them speechless. Such a person should have become a sovereign. If such a person with great wisdom and perseverance couldn't become a sovereign, then who in the world deserved to become a sovereign? It's just that when the Lords return, they'll discover that the laws of the world have changed. Many people exclaimed in shock. They watched as Yi Shiwen succeeded step by step, refining the 3,000 martial paths and sublimating them one by one. Rumble. 3 years. After a full 3 years, the last terrifying tribulation lightning finally descended. But at this time, the tribulation lightning that could have posed a threat to sovereigns disappeared a meter above Yi Shiwen's head, unable to descend. The tribulation clouds in the sky finally dissipated completely. A shocking aura swept out from Yi Shiwen's body, shaking the entire primal chaos. This frenzy even swept through the various ancient eras. Some half-step sovereigns were dumbfounded. Since ancient times, there has never been a sovereign who was this powerful when he achieved the Tao. What's so special about this? Indeed, there has never been a sovereign who was this powerful when he achieved the Tao. But which half-step sovereign could kill a sovereign before achieving the Tao? He's never been an ordinary person. Some sovereigns were disdainful. They had long since accepted this kind of setting. I am a sovereign. These simple words were enough to announce to the entire primordial chaos that yet another sovereign had been born. In a short span of the martial epoch, 3 sovereigns had been born in succession, each stronger and more terrifying than the last. Yishuan was too powerful. When he was around, the entire primal chaos had been frozen by him. They didn't know if there had ever been such a powerful sovereign since ancient times, but many half-step sovereigns knew. At the very least, they hadn't seen such a powerful sovereign in the past few epochs. Even the fortune creation heavenly monarch, who had swept through everything in the past and entered the mysterious place, wasn't as powerful as Yishuan now. Now that Yishuan was so powerful, it had already become a concept, invincible. When Yishuan returned to the martial epoch, countless people immediately knelt down. Although they had already treated Yishuan as a sovereign before, there was still a difference between treating him as a sovereign and treating him as a sovereign. Now he was a true sovereign. Countless living beings willingly knelt down. In the eyes of many, Yishuan had probably even surpassed the fortune creation heavenly monarch in terms of contributions. Countless experts came to pay their respects. Now that Yishuan had advanced to a sovereign, the first thing he did was to start mending the heavens again. He even announced it to the world. I'm going to mend the heavens. Powerhouses and experts from all over can come and watch. Yishuan's voice even spread throughout the primal chaos and into the various ancient epochs. Yishuan could be said to have read many ancient records from these ancient epochs. It could be said that he owed them a favor. This time, Yishuan was going to return the favor. These people could all come and watch him mend the heavens. When he was mending the heavens, the various heavenly Daos would become unprecedentedly clear. Under such circumstances, these half-step sovereigns would definitely gain many benefits by watching him mend the heavens. Aside from the experts from the ancient epochs, there were also many experts from the martial epoch who could gain many benefits. When the experts from the various ancient epochs heard this news, they were skeptical at first. After all, the martial epoch was their enemy. Would they do something that clearly benefited them? However, when they thought about it, Yishuan did not kill them. Or perhaps, at his level, he did not need to care about half-step sovereigns. After all, Yishuan had not cared about them in the past, let alone now. Therefore, many people went directly to watch this rare grand occasion. Although they could see it from afar, it was not the same as Yishuan's permission to get closer to see it. At the same time, many half-step sovereigns thought, does this prove that Yishuan is even more confident? Previously, when Yishuan was a half-step sovereign, he did not allow others to get close to him when he was mending the heavens lest they affect him. However, now it did not matter to him. He did not care. This was his true display of strength. When almost everyone had arrived, Yishuan finally started mending the heavens. This time, the martial epoch had yet to enter a declining period. However, the heavenly Daos still sent out all sorts of mysterious phenomena, letting everyone know that Yishuan had already started mending the heavens. Yishuan's body emitted countless heavenly Daos, many of which were unheard of in the martial epoch. Many experts from the ancient epochs discovered with tears in their eyes that these were the heavenly Daos of their epoch. Now, Yishuan actually extracted them to fill in the gaps of the martial epoch. They did not know how Yishuan's comprehension of their epoch's heavenly Daos had reached such a profound level. Furthermore, many of the Daos that Yishuan mended had already disappeared. The epoch's great Daos that were destroyed were from many epochs ago. However, they reappeared in the present. Countless strands of golden light descended from the sky and poured into Yishuan's body. Compared to how carefully he mended the heavens earlier, Yishuan's movements were much smoother this time. There were no obstructions. This was enough to show Yishuan's current astonishing cultivation. As for the other half-step sovereigns and heavenly venerables, they all felt that the heavenly Daos had never been this clear before. They only felt that their comprehension of the heavenly Daos was gradually rising. Every minute and every second was equivalent to the speed of their previous comprehension of the heavenly Daos of 100 years. It was extremely shocking. They all looked at the person sitting in the center of the primal chaos. All of this was brought about by him. However, at this moment, a spear emitting a bronze radiance appeared. It swept through the depths of the primal chaos and directly blasted towards Yishiwen. Everyone was shocked, especially the many experts from the martial epic. They were shocked and angry. However, there was nothing they could do. This spear was simply too fast. Its might was too terrifying. They could not block it at all, nor could they keep up with such speed. At this critical moment, Yishiwen's martial ancestor seal suddenly flew out from the top of his head and deflected the bronze spear. Bang! A loud explosion resounded. The entire primal chaos was shocked by this collision. Who is it? How dare you? You're courting death. At this moment, many people suddenly reacted. Ancient Heaven Monarch, if you want to kill me, then come out with your true body. Otherwise, I'm afraid you are still far from being able to do so. Chapter 3877. Yishiwen's calm words shocked the entire primordial chaos. The eternal celestial monarch was one of the strongest rulers of all time, the one who'd founded the eternal sacred land. He'd appear just like that. If there was a ruler who could be considered the strongest throughout history, no one would be able to say for sure because the chances of the various rulers actually meeting each other were simply too low. It was hard to say who was the strongest. Even Yishiwen, who killed rulers as easily as eating and drinking, didn't dare say he was the strongest. But if there was a group of the strongest, then the eternal celestial monarch would definitely be there. Even among sovereigns, he was an exalted existence. He hadn't come through the eternal sacred land's eternal gate. Instead, he'd created his own grand technique, the eternal sacred land and the eternal divine bridge, opening another gate to the mysterious place. In terms of strength, the only person who could rival him was the eternal great sage. One could imagine how powerful such a person would be. Even rulers couldn't help but become serious when they heard this name, let alone those half-step rulers, who were even more shocked. What? It's the eternal celestial monarch. How could it be him? It's over. I'm afraid the two greatest figures of all time are going to fight. Does this count as a fight that happened billions of years ago? Many people were shocked by this shocking collision. After all, both of them were among the strongest rulers in the world. Although the eternal celestial monarch was famous, Yishiwen's notoriety wasn't inferior in any way. At this time, a figure slowly materialized on the bronze spear. It was a figure that looked down on all time. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw this figure. The eternal celestial monarch. It really is the eternal celestial monarch. Many of the members of the eternal sacred grounds felt their eyes brimming with tears of excitement. In a sense, they were all followers of eternal celestial monarch. Although the eternal sacred grounds had many sovereigns joining them later on, in reality, it could only be the eternal sacred grounds. After all, eternal celestial monarch's influence was just too deep. Most of the creatures in the eternal sacred land were descendants of the eternal celestial monarch's followers. Although many eras had passed, the natural subservience imprinted in their blood hadn't changed. They all knelt and worshipped. That figure was holding a bronze spear and was coldly looking at Yishiwen. It was getting closer and closer. Yishiwen just opened his eyes, looked indifferently at this figure, and said, "You dare to kill me with just a projection? You're looking down on me too much. Even your main body can't be so insolent." Everyone came to a sudden realization. So this was just a projection of an ancient celestial monarch. But to them, it was still very strong. Especially the half-step rulers, they felt a suffocating feeling. If he were to descend with his true body, how powerful would he be? Many people didn't dare to imagine it. I should have killed you back then. I can't believe I let you grow to this level. The eternal celestial monarch said indifferently, "You could have killed me when I was crossing the tribulation. Why didn't you? You made me waste my means to deal with you. If you had dared to appear at that time, I would have killed you then." Yishiwen said indifferently. Many people opened their eyes wide again. Many people only now realize that there was such an inside story. This was the most terrifying thing. Yi Shiwen had actually prepared a backup plan to kill the eternal celestial monarch at that time. Didn't that mean that Yi Shiwen didn't use his full strength when he was crossing the tribulation? But even so, Yi Shiwen had already shocked the whole world at that time. You can't do it. If it wasn't for the fate creation heavenly monarch, do you think you could cross the tribulation smoothly? The eternal celestial monarch said the name of another supreme powerhouse coldly. Hiss! Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. To think that the fate creation heavenly monarch was behind this. This matter was simply too complicated. There were so many rulers fighting behind the scenes. The level of danger was so high that if they hadn't spoken up, no one would have known. Even if you came, what could you do? You would just die. At this moment, another cold voice rang out. A figure appeared on a rank 36 Azure Lotus. Unfortunately, you didn't show up. Otherwise, I could have killed you. That person was none other than Qin Jun, another unparalleled expert. It's Qin Jun. Was he there during the tribulation? That's right. He's also from the martial epic. The fate creation heavenly monarch is also from the martial epic. Naturally, he favors the martial monarchs and Qin Jun. Only now did everyone realize how complicated this matter was. They could already vaguely see that the rulers had split into two camps, each trying to eliminate the other to prevent future troubles. The eternal celestial monarch looked at Qin Jun. You actually dared to come out. You used the creation key to enter the mysterious place and snatched away the primal chaos Azure Lotus. If not for that, your cultivation would not have advanced so quickly. Only now did many people realize that this was related to an ancient secret. This was especially so for the experts of the martial epic. It turned out that there was indeed such a thing. Qin Jun had snatched away the creation key, indirectly causing the martial epic's strength to decline. Of course, no one dared to criticize Qin Jun. They only understood. So, that was the case. The creation key was refined by the fate creation heavenly monarch to enter the mysterious place. You say that I snatched away the primal chaos Azure Lotus from you? Qin Jun said with a cold smile. However, you probably do not know this. I am the reincarnation of the primal chaos Azure Lotus's primordial spirit. Previously, you fought with the eternal sage emperor, severely injuring the primal chaos Azure Lotus. For the sake of the primal chaos Azure Lotus, the two of you fought for an epic. In the end, the primal chaos Azure Lotus's primordial spirit escaped and entered the martial epic. That was how I was reborn. Everyone could not help sucking in a breath of cold air. Today, one incident followed another. There were too many things going on behind the scenes. Now, many people understood why Qin Jun's cultivation had advanced so quickly, even setting a new record, achieving the Tao after the fate creation heavenly monarch. It turned out that he actually had such a shocking foundation. That was the primal chaos green lotus. In fact, there were many records of the primal chaos green lotus in many years. It was a supreme Tao flower that recorded the great Tao of this world. At the beginning of every era, the primal chaos green lotus would appear to stabilize the primal chaos of the world and spread the great Tao before leaving. The primal chaos Azure Lotus was actually the reincarnation of the primal chaos Azure Lotus's primordial spirit. No wonder Qin Jun's murderous intent toward the ancient heavenly monarch was so heavy. It was the ancient heavenly monarch and the eternal sage emperor who had nearly killed him. Of course, the reincarnated Qin Jun. He could no longer be considered the primal chaos Azure Lotus's primordial spirit. However, this huge karma still continued. So that's how it is. Back then, I was entangled by the eternal sage emperor. Otherwise, I would have gotten rid of him. Unexpectedly, you managed to cultivate such a magic skill. The ancient heavenly monarch only felt slightly rueful. The world was unpredictable. Back when he and the eternal sage emperor fought over the primal chaos Azure Lotus, he had not expected such a thing to happen. Even after Qin Jun had used the fate key to charge into the mysterious place and steal the primal chaos azure lotus, while the ancient heavenly monarch and the eternal sage emperor were not paying attention. Even so, it is useless. It is impossible for you to defeat me and the eternal sage emperor. If not for the fate creation heavenly monarch's interference, do you think you would have the opportunity to mature? It is time for the martial epic to end. The ancient heavenly monarch said, "You want to mend the heavens. This is a heaven-defying act. You have placed yourself on the opposite side of the many rulers. I just want to find a path to eternal life for all living things. It is fine if you do not help. However, if you dare to stop me, I will definitely kill you." Yi Shiwen looked at the ancient heavenly monarch and said, "Ha ha ha, martial monarch, you think too highly of yourself. What? Do you think we are all fools? Since ancient times, countless rulers have not been able to do it. Do you think you can do it?" The ancient heavenly monarch laughed heartily. He found the situation extremely laughable. Although the fate creation heavenly monarch is obstructing us this time, he will not be able to stop us for long. When that time comes, it will be time for you to die. The reincarnation cycle is the true great Tao of primal chaos. How dare you defy the heavens? If the heavens are so cold and heartless, so what if I defy them? Yi Shiwen said coldly. A mere projection dares to be so presumptuous in front of me. You are really courting death. Yi Shiwen slapped out. The ancient heavenly monarch could not block it at all. He was directly slapped. Then his body exploded with a bang. That bit of the ancient heavenly monarch's original spirit was directly destroyed. The bronze spear instantly turned into a stream of light and disappeared. It entered the desolate edge of the universe to avoid Yi Shiwen's blade. Its original spirit could feel how terrifying Yi Shiwen was. In a situation where it did not have a master, it was not Yi Shiwen's match at all. Seeing the ancient heavenly monarch killed so easily, many experts from the ancient Holy Land trembled with fear. At this moment, they regretted coming here to watch Yi Shiwen mend the heavens. Didn't they fall into the hands of Yi Shiwen? It was simply courting death. However, to their surprise, Yi Shiwen did not have the slightest intention of blaming them. They quickly understood that Yi Shiwen did not take them seriously. Even if they were experts from the ancient Holy Land, they were no different from ants in Yi Shiwen's eyes. There was no need to kill them just because of a matter with the ancient heavenly monarch. This truly proved that Yi Shiwen had reached a certain level of strength. Chapter 3878. Because he no longer had to worry about the eternal sacred land. Even if the eternal sacred land stood on the opposite side of him, so what? Did he need to worry? Many people from the eternal sacred land felt very complicated. On one hand, they admired Yi Shiwen's broad-mindedness. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen didn't care about them at all, which made them feel very depressed. Yi Shiwen just sat quietly in the chaos, then looked up at Qin Jun and said, "Fellow Taoist, congratulations on achieving the great Tao." He looked at Qin Jun. Qin Jun had finally come out, which meant that he had finally entered the late-stage sovereign realm. He was almost invincible in the current world. Even when the fortune creation heaven monarch was in power, he wasn't this powerful, an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. He was originally very curious about Qin Jun's background. He had repeatedly created miracles, and his strength was almost no less than the legends he had created. It wasn't until today that he realized that Qin Jun had such a foundation. However, it didn't matter if Qin Jun said it now. The Chaos Green Lotus was his foundation and also his safeguard. It was something that even the Eternal Heaven Monarch and the Eternal Saint Monarch wanted to fight for. But now, he had the strength to protect himself. This was the difference. Some people were born to be legends, such as someone like Qin Jun. Finally, some small achievements. Qin Jun smiled slightly. He had gained a lot from this time's closed-door cultivation. Since fellow Taoist is here, let's look at the great Tao of mending the heavens with me. I believe it will also be beneficial to your great Tao. Yi Shiwen invited. That's what I was thinking. Qin Jun smiled slightly. Then, Qin Jun sat down cross-legged beside Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly and continued to mend the heavens. Every time Yi Shiwen succeeded in mending the heavens, the heavenly Tao would explode. Then, the heavenly Tao would rectify it, and the entire rhythm would become more perfect and amazing. The lifespan of the martial epic would also increase. Beside him, Qin Jun was constantly watching this scene. His eyes were deep and bright, like the stars in the sky. He saw everything that was happening and analyzed the great Tao within. He felt that he had a new understanding of the great Tao. It was as if he and Yi Shiwen were verifying each other's Tao. How powerful were their cultivations? Verifying each other's Tao itself could allow them to gain a lot. Under the witness of countless people, Yi Shiwen had succeeded this time. Moreover, it was different from the previous times when he had mended the heavens, where he had almost suffered serious injuries. This time, he had mended the heavens with ease. His cultivation had leaped several levels after transcending the tribulation. Mending the sky would be much easier. The martial epic extended the peak lifespan for another 10 million years. This was the peak lifespan, different from any other period of time. During this period, all living beings would be in their peak state. Geniuses would appear in large numbers, and experts would be as common as the clouds. This was simply unimaginably strong. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with a fearful look in their eyes. All of this had been accomplished by him. He had done something that no one had ever done since ancient times. Although they did not know if the martial epic would have a chance to exist forever, at least it seemed that there were no signs of it declining. Many experts of the various ancient epics looked at the living beings of the martial epic with envy. Back then, they had never received such treatment. In fact, if it were the ancient epics that only had half-step rulers, their rise to extinction would have been even shorter. However, there are some things that could not be envied. After mending the sky, the experts of the various epics left one after another. This time, the sky had only been mending for a few years. However, they felt that they had gained a lot from it. They had gained much more than if they had cultivated bitterly for millions of years. When Yi Shiwen mended the sky, he had practically displayed the great Tao's Tao laws in front of them. Although the great Tao laws of different epics were different, they were essentially the same to a certain extent. They had also benefited a lot. Especially the experts of the martial epic, they felt that their cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. This was also the benefit that Yi Shiwen had given them. After mending the sky, Yi Shiwen invited Qin Jun to the divine court. In the depths of the divine court, there was a wordless Taoist stele in a vast and boundless space. It really is the wordless Taoist stele. However, why do I feel that it is somewhat different from before? Qin Jun could not help but feel that it was strange, because I found the wordless Taoist stele's tool spirit. Only when the wordless Taoist stele and the tool spirit fuse will it be at its strongest. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. No wonder. This wordless Taoist stele, which countless half-step rulers and rulers have been searching for since ancient times, actually fell into your hands. What great luck! Qin Jun could not help but exclaim. As the reincarnation of the primal chaos green lotus tool spirit, he had a flood of good fortune. However, it seemed that compared to Yi Shiwen's luck, there was still a big gap. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly and said, "It's all thanks to him that I was able to achieve my Tao. I invited you here because I want you to join me in mending the heavens. The martial epic is our foundation. The more stable the martial epic is, the further we can go. Isn't that right?" "Yes, that is true. However, with your strength, you should be able to complete it by yourself." Qin Jun asked. "You may not know this, but because the martial epic is the great Tao of heaven and earth, the martial epic will survive for a long time. Not only will it be attacked by the ancient rulers, but it will also suffer the backlash of the heavenly Tao. There will be a vague pressure exerted on it. The longer the martial epic survives, the stronger this pressure will be. Therefore, I want to join hands with you." Yi Shiwen said, "I didn't expect that I would really go against the heavens. That's fine. I've done too many things in my life anyway. Even if I die on this trip, there's nothing to be afraid of. Jun said. Why would they die? The ancient heaven monarch and the eternal sage monarch are indeed terrifying. However, they're being held back by the fortune creation heaven monarch. We still have enough time to make a breakthrough. When we become peak rulers, we will kill our way into the mysterious place and help the fortune creation heaven monarch to kill them. Yishuin said. He had always regarded the ancient heaven monarch and the eternal sage monarch as his final and most terrifying opponents. They had been behind the destruction of many epics. In fact, they had even accelerated the destruction of many epics. If the martial epic wanted to survive for a long time, then these two would inevitably be unavoidable opponents. Without any other choice, they would inevitably become the final opponents. I'm afraid they may not give us the time. Jun said with some worry. However, there's no way out now. We can only advance bravely until the end of eternity. Only then can we stop. Well, there's no point in talking about this now. Let's comprehend the great Tao. Yishuin said. For the outside world, the influence of this successful mending of the heavens was far more than this. For many people, this meant that the martial epic had entered a new era. Even the entire primal chaos had entered a new era. It was an unprecedented, eternal era. As long as the heavenly Tao of the martial epic did not decline, then the living beings of the martial epic would not die. This was extremely terrifying. Tens of millions of years passed in the blink of an eye. The blue sea turned into mulberry fields again, and the world changed greatly again. The martial epic expanded several times. It was now 1/3 larger than before. 10,000 Daos coexisted. Countless heroes advanced bravely, and many more emerged. But this time, Yishuin released the restrictions on half-step rulers, and several half-step rulers came out. In terms of strength, the martial epic could even compare to the accumulations of countless years like the eternal sacred land and the eternal sacred land. Seeing that the martial epic was about to reach its peak, countless people looked up in anticipation, hoping that Yishuin could step forward to mend the heavens. However, to everyone's surprise, someone did step forward to mend the heavens. However, that person was not Yishuin, but Jun. Under everyone's gazes, Jun's mending of the heavens went very smoothly. He did not encounter many setbacks and successfully completed this mending of the heavens. Many experts of the ancient epic who wanted to watch a good show despaired. The current martial epic did not have only one person who could mend the heavens. There were two. If that was the case, the martial epic would have more hope of lasting for a long time. Tens of millions of years passed one after another, alternating. Yishuin and Jun also alternated between mending the heavens, allowing the martial epic to remain in its peak state. However, such days would eventually come to an end. Just at that instant, the martial epic, which was originally in its peak state, suddenly plunged into chaos. Scenes of imminent destruction appeared everywhere. The ground cracked, the sea overturned, and cracks appeared in the sky. A boundless aura of destruction enveloped the entire martial epic. What's going on? Such a turn of events alarmed everyone. While everyone was enjoying the benefits of the martial epic's peak state, the martial epic seemed to have skipped its declining period and entered a period of destruction. Everyone was stunned. How could it be like this? Such a change startled the experts of the various ancient epics in the primal chaos, as the aura of destruction affected their epics as well. These ancient epics were very experienced, so they immediately made this judgment. The epic was changing. To think that the epic is changing again. What's going on? The martial epic is actually forcefully changing and destroying? I understand now. The lifespan of an epic is fixed. Even if Jun and Jun extended the martial epic's peak lifespan, the martial epic's lifespan did not change. It is still the same lifespan. Now it is time for the backlash. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.